Currently, there are approximately 20 billion animals inhabiting our world. If everything were ideal, we would have 5 billion more animals on Earth. But many species have gone extinct, and around 44,000 species are currently endangered. The largest, most recent mass extinction event in history occurred during the dinosaur era, leading to the eradication of 75% of species on Earth. The Tulachi wallaby is a long-lost relative of today's kangaroo, but they had a hidden superpower, night vision. That's why they were mostly active at night. They were 3 feet tall and fed on grass, fruit leaves, and other plants. Wallabies lived in grassy areas near swamps and other water bodies, but not for long. By the 19th century, their numbers had gone down, bringing them to the edge of extinction. Only 14 wallabies had been left in the wild by 1920. A rescue mission was launched. They tried to capture the last 14 animals to protect them. But the situation got out of control and 10 wallabies lost their lives. The 4 remaining ones were transferred to a special facility, and in 1935, the last animal passed away. Only one picture of the Tulachi wallaby is left now. There were reports of the animal's sightings after that, but no proof was shown, and the creature was officially declared extinct in the 70s. Short-faced bears were a unique species that lived in North America, particularly Alaska. It was a massive bear, weighing around 1,500 pounds. When standing on its hind legs, it was around 12 feet tall, a whole foot taller than today's biggest beast in this family, the polar bear. This animal was different from today's bears because almost all of them are omnivores, except for polar bears. But this monster was solely carnivorous, which was the reason for their extinction. During the end of the Ice Age, many herbivores were gone, and those bears did not have enough food to survive. They were the Usain Bolt of the bear world, the fastest Bruins to have ever lived, reaching a top speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 5 miles faster than grizzlies. There are around 400 million pigeons in the world now. Some time ago, in America, a species of birds called passenger pigeons were abundant throughout the country, especially in the eastern forests. There were more than 1 billion of them, but they went from 1 billion to 0 in a few years. They had small heads and necks, but long tails and wings and strong breast muscles that allowed them to fly super long distances. The last passenger pigeon passed away in captivity in 1914. It was named Martha. With that, the ecosystem in the U.S. has never seen this bird again. Now, elks are enormous animals, but they look tiny when you compare them to long-gone Irish elks. That elk was around 7 feet tall at the shoulder with a humongous antler of 12 feet. Today, elk are only 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder and have around 4-foot-long antlers. Despite its name, this elk was found all over the world, from Asia to Europe. It got its name because, in Ireland near Dublin, researchers found a perfectly preserved specimen. Since then, it's been called the Irish elk. The last one passed away in Ireland. The main reason for their disappearance was their inability to adapt to changes. When the Ice Age ended, the elk could not survive and became extinct. Now, somewhere deep in the forests of Costa Rica lives the interesting-looking golden toad. It was discovered in 1966 in one particular spot where all toads would gather to mate. In 1967, a large population of this golden nugget was noted in that same spot. But the following year, only 10 to 11 toads were seen, and the year after that, in 1968, only one lonely male toad showed up at the spot. For years, there were searches for golden toads. In 2004, the toads were officially declared extinct. Humans were not responsible this time. The drought in the area in the 80s had a significant impact on the toads. Still, the last straw was the arrival of a new fungal species that caused the animal's skin to thicken, eventually leading to the toad passing away. This chytrid fungus is responsible for the extinction of more than 90 frog and amphibian species, becoming one of the biggest threats to their lives. Now, Canada is a very cold country, no surprise there, and nobody would expect tropical birds like parrots to live there. However, there was a parrot species that lived in America and some parts of Canada. I'm talking about the Carolina parakeet. Those were truly beautiful birds with orange-yellowish heads and green bodies. Their favorite rest spots were big trees alongside rivers. This parrot's favorite food was cocklebur seeds, which are poisonous to us, but the bird had no problem eating them. Also, they used the dangerous cockleburs as a defense mechanism. After they ingested loads of them, their meat became poisonous, and predators do not enjoy eating toxic birds. Carolina parakeets were abundant, there were millions of them. But since the Ice Age, their numbers had been gradually going down because of natural reasons, mainly temperature. By 1935, no such parakeets were left in the wild. Today's African lion had a much more prominent and notorious cousin, the Barbary lion. Those cats were mentioned in many famous old books. They were described as mean, terrifying beasts. It's believed that they were the largest lion species ever. Those big cats weighed around 600 pounds and were 9 feet from the head to tail. Unfortunately, this lion was declared extinct in the 90s due to many factors. Today, we only have one photo of this animal taken from a plane. Paradise parrots were native to Australia. They were genuinely amazing birds with captivating colors. What was unique about them was their nesting habits. They only nested in termite mounds. This parrot was always on the edge of extinction, and the reason for that is still unknown. Mice, rats, and other animals also hunted them, and it added fuel to the fire. The last bird was spotted in the year 1972. Since then, paradise parrots have only been seen in museums. The Gulf of Mexico was once home to Caribbean monk seals. This species of seals enjoyed spending time in the warm subtropical climate of the Caribbean. Most of the time, they were found near reefs and islands, foraging for food. Like most of us, they also loved sandy beaches and were usually seen in groups of 100 seals, resting before the next adventure. In the year 1886, monk seals were declared extinct. You can still see this animal in 2 museums. Both are located in the UK. As we all know, zebras have black and white stripes. But once, a zebra species had only half the body covered with brown and white stripes. The rest was just brown, and the belly was white. It was called the quagga. They lived in the southern part of Africa in grass fields and wet pastures, like today's zebras, and ate grass and other plants. The last quagga perished in 1888, but not all hope is lost. Today, extensive research is being done to bring this animal back into the wild. Australia is home to many outlandish animals, but the craziest ones are probably gastric brooding frogs. This species is not like your ordinary frog that lays eggs. They hatch their young inside their stomach and give birth by vomiting around 25 fully formed young frogs. Sometimes their stomach becomes so bloated that they have to breathe through their skin. 2 species of this frog were discovered in the northern and southern parts of Australia in the 1970s by Mike Taylor. A decade after their discovery, both species are gone. The main reason for their extinction is the chytrid fungus. Luckily for them, they're also part of a de-extinction program that's putting serious efforts into bringing them back into the wild.
In the middle of a dense, foggy forest, you spot glowing red eyes. Suddenly, a strange clicking sound breaks the silence. It's not just in your head. Stretching over 2,000 miles from Newfoundland to central Alabama, the Appalachian Mountains hide terrifying creatures like Bigfoot and the Wampus cat. You might think they're just myths, but there's actually a chilling explanation behind them. First up, the Mothman. This creature is a superstar in the world of horror stories, but not many people know that its legend actually started in the heart of Appalachia, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Back in 1966, 2 couples were driving when they suddenly came across a human-sized moth, about 7 feet tall, with glowing red eyes. They totally freaked out and sped up, but the strange creature flew and chased after the car, making a screeching sound until it finally disappeared. After this encounter, the group told the police that the creature looked like a tall, muscular man with huge, white wings, but they couldn't see its face because of the hypnotic effect of its eyes. Since then, the Mothman has become a famous urban legend. People swear they've seen similar creatures in other parts of the US, like Chicago and Gallipolis, Ohio. Theories about what people saw range from a balloon with a flashlight tied to it to extraterrestrial beings visiting Earth. But it's also possible that it was just a bird, more specifically, a barred owl. People probably mistook a bird for this creature because the barred owl looks eerie in the dark. It has spooky eyes and makes creepy clicking sounds. Still, these birds aren't huge, so it's strange how they've been mistaken for such a scary monster. Wait, what did people actually see then? The second strange beings are known as the moon-eyed people. This was a group of bearded, flat-faced, pale people with big blue eyes who supposedly lived all across Appalachia. Why did I say supposedly? Well, because no one could ever prove they actually existed. The stories about them were part of the Cherokee folklore, so we don't really know how reliable the information is. Still, their legends creeped out both locals and visitors in Appalachia. The moon-eyed people were said to come near a house at night, and people inside would hear them talking. But they were warned not to go outside, and no matter what happened, they couldn't watch them. In the morning, they'd find their corn gathered as if someone had helped them. Or the opposite, fields completely cleared like a whole group of men had been working there and taken all the crops. One of the most famous stories about them involves a mysterious stone wall found at Fort Mountain State Park. It was built between the years 500 and 1500, but no one knows who actually built it. Some people believe it was the moon-eyed people's work, and the ruins today are proof they really existed. They might not be delusional though. One theory suggests that the moon-eyed people were actually Welsh people. At the time, they were in Appalachia, mining the mountains, and the Cherokee gave them this nickname because they lived underground and had great night vision. Hey kitty kitty, come here. Oh wait, what's that? According to legends, the Wampus cat is a half-dog, half-cat creature that roams the Appalachians after dark, or just before dawn. And it can run totally upright on two legs. So if it comes running after you like a human would, you'd better hide fast and don't look at it. Rumor has it that its yellow eyes can pierce the hearts and souls of anyone unlucky enough to cross its path, driving them to the edge of madness. Okay, that's probably just folklore, but the real-life creature that might be hiding behind these legends isn't much friendlier. The stories describe the Wampus cat as a kind of underwater panther, so some experts believe it sounds a lot like a mountain lion. Apparently, they're really strong swimmers and cross a large lake without much difficulty. Now, let's say you're driving in the Appalachian region at night. Suddenly, you spot an animal in the middle of the road. You slow down and take a closer look. It looks like a deer, but there's something off. Its eyes are too close together, its head is misshapen, its neck is too long, and its legs move in unnatural ways, almost like a puppet on strings. Oh, and even if you honk, this creature won't move. It's definitely not afraid of you. This is the not deer. Although some people have reported sightings as far away as Texas and even Norway, it's definitely an Appalachian myth. One young woman said she was hiking when she spotted a doe. Suddenly, the animal looked right at her, and she noticed that all of its knees were bent backwards. Any direction a deer's knee is supposed to go, the deer's knees did not. Oh my. Anyway, the internet is flooded with people talking about the not deer and its creepy behavior. But the thing is, we can't find a single photo or video that proves it actually exists. So what could it be? One explanation points to sick animals. There's a neurological condition known as CWD that affects different deer species like elk, moose, and even reindeer. It causes the brains of infected animals to degenerate, leading to loss of body functions and abnormal behavior. Since the symptoms match what some people describe as not deer behavior, it makes sense to think this condition could be behind the strange sightings. The last creature on our list, the one and only Bigfoot. You know, that large, hairy, human-like creature that walks upright and roams the dense forest in the US. In the Appalachian Mountains, there have been Bigfoot sightings from the Adirondacks in New York all the way down to the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Georgia. This bizarre figure has haunted our imagination for decades, but scientists believe it could actually be a humble black bear in disguise. It turns out the American black bear is found in many of the same areas where people claim to have spotted Bigfoot. Studies show that for every 1,000 increase in the bear population, there was a 4% increase in Bigfoot sightings. And there are two main reasons why the American black bear could be the perfect imposter. The first reason, they're big. Adult males can weigh up to 660 pounds and grow up to 6 feet long. The second reason, while we think they primarily walk on 4 legs, they are perfectly capable of standing upright. In fact, not only are they capable, they do it all the time. They stand up to get a better look at something, sniff the air, or just to appear bigger when they feel threatened. When they do that, they definitely look like a human-like figure. And for those people who aren't used to being around bears, it's easy to mistake them for something more sinister and out of this world. Now, you might be wondering why so many strange sights and creatures are said to live in the Appalachian, and the answer might be linked to the region's age. The process that led to the creation of these mountains has been going on for over 480 million years, which means they're older than Saturn's rings, for example. Over all this time, the region has gone through some drastic changes in its composition, creating a huge number of ecological niches with varying elevations, slopes, aspects, temperatures, and rainfall. And according to experts, the reason the region is so full of bizarre legends isn't just because the mountains are old, but because they still look old. Since a large part of Appalachia is basically untouched by humans, much of that ancient biodiversity is still around and seems unknown to us. This has created a landscape full of deep forests, mist-covered valleys, and winding rivers. A place where secrets seem to be hiding in the fog. And over the centuries, the isolation of the Appalachians only allowed these stories to grow. What do Paris Hilton and Chris Hemsworth have in common? Well, apparently, they both want to bring animals back to life. But we're not talking about making your favorite pet live forever. Nope. These celebs are actually helping a science company bring back animals that no longer exist, like the mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, and even the iconic dodo. If everything goes according to plan, these fascinating creatures could be walking among us again by 2028. This groundbreaking effort is led by a company called Colossal Biosciences. At this very moment, they're working on a way to revive the core genes of animals that disappeared from Earth ages ago. The idea is to replicate those genes using DNA from a close, living relative. If that's all Greek to you, don't worry. We'll break it down a bit later. So, the mammoth is one of the animals they plan to bring back, and people are especially hyped about it. These incredible, massive creatures roamed parts of Africa, Europe, Asia, and North America until about 4,000 years ago. Some people might mix them up with modern elephants, but there are some key differences. For starters, they had huge curved tusks that curled inward and were used to dig for food. They also adapted to survive in freezing climates, like having 2 layers of thick fur to keep their blood warm. But mammoths and elephants do have a lot in common. The woolly mammoth shares 99.5% of its genes with its closest relative, the Asian elephant. That's huge because it means that mammoths are genetically closer to Asian elephants than Asian elephants are to African elephants, for example. The company's bold plan is to create a living, walking elephant-mammoth hybrid that looks just like the ones that used to roam the planet. This animal will look like, walk like, and even sound like a woolly mammoth, but most importantly, it'll be able to live in the same ecosystem that the mammoth left behind. If the scientists succeed in bringing back enough of these creatures, one of their big goals is to help restore the Arctic tundra ecosystem. But how do they actually plan to create the mammoth? Here's their plan. First, they need to find well-preserved samples of woolly mammoths in places like Alaska, for example. Then they'll need to sequence the mammoth's genome and the genome of its closest relative, the Asian elephant. The next step is to identify the important genes that made the woolly mammoth perfectly adapted to cold temperatures, like its shaggy hair, curved tusks, and dome-shaped cranium. In other words, they need to identify which genes make the mammoth, well, the mammoth. Now comes the interesting part. They will use top-notch gene editing tools, kind of like scissors, to cut the Asian elephant DNA and replace those spots with the mammoth sequence. This will allow them to create a new cell line and, later, an embryo. This embryo will grow inside a healthy female Asian elephant, who will be the surrogate. And just like that, a new, cold-adapted elephant will be born. Or at least, that's what scientists hope. Specialists predict that this Mammoth 2.0 could be on Earth as early as 2028. The reason it will take a while is that their gestation period is around 22 months. But if that deadline feels too far for you, there is actually a chance we could get a surprise a lot sooner. That's because some of the other animals they plan to revive have a much shorter gestation period, like Australia's thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. The company is also doing whatever it takes to give this animal a second shot at life. And the good news is that the process seems to be well advanced. Recently, the group announced that the Tasmanian tiger's genome is about 99% complete. This animal was native to the Australian mainland and the islands of Tasmania and New Guinea. A big part of the Tasmanian tiger population disappeared over 3,000 years ago. But about 5,000 of them kept roaming around until pretty recently. It's believed that the last thylacine passed away in 1936. To revive the Tasmanian tiger, scientists first need a sample of the ancient animal. So they took RNA molecules from a 110-year-old preserved head that had been kept in ethanol. The team was really lucky because it's rare to find old samples that are so well preserved, allowing scientists to use advanced DNA analysis techniques. And by that, I mean they did a full, complete analysis. By studying RNA samples from important tissue areas like the tongue, nasal cavity, brain, and eyes, experts were able to learn a bunch of interesting things about the Tasmanian tiger. They could figure out how its brain worked, and also what this beast could smell, see, and taste. By the way, these semi-nocturnal animals had a special appetite for small rodents, lizards, and birds. After finding the perfect sample, the process of reviving it will be pretty much the same as with the mammoth, but with an elephant as a DNA donor, of course. In the case of the Tasmanian tiger, its closest living relative is a small marsupial called the fat-tailed dunnart. Even though this animal is small, it is a ferocious carnivore. So experts believe the whole DNA editing process will work just fine with its sequence. Their goal is to turn a fat-tailed dunnart cell into a thylacine cell. To accomplish that, they did more than 300 unique genetic changes into a dunnart cell. So there is no doubt they're pushing all the boundaries to make the dream of reviving animals a reality. This project also plans to revive the iconic dodo. You know, that funny-looking bird from the paradisiacal island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean? And here, things get a little trickier, since we don't know much about this creature, which has origins that go back about 23 million years. Basically, the only clues we have about what dodos looked like when they were alive come from a handful of drawings, paintings, and written descriptions from the 17th century. But since those pictures are all pretty different from each other, and only a few of them were based on real live dodos, we're still not 100% sure what they actually looked like. And as for how they behaved, well, we don't know much about that either. That's why reviving this long-absent legend will be super interesting and really enlightening. The sample they used to extract an old dodo genome came from a skull in the collection of the Natural History Museum of Denmark. And the dodo's closest living relative, which will provide the host cells, is the Nicobar pigeon, a gray bird with colorful features found in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in India. If everything goes smoothly, in a couple of years, we might see the fabulous and iconic dodo with our own eyes. Reviving animals might sound impossible, but science and technology together can be a real game changer, not only by protecting today's animals, but also by restoring species that disappeared from the planet long ago. Actually, we've already pulled this off. A wild goat called the bucardo, also known as the Pyrenean ibex, went extinct in the year 2000. But 3 years later, scientists managed to bring it back to life, using a method pretty similar to what we've talked about in this video. It took 57 tries, but one of them finally worked, and a bucardo clone was born. Unfortunately, the animal only lived for 10 minutes. You might think that wasn't a success, but it was actually a huge step forward in the whole animal revival field. Now, specialists can only hope the project to bring back the dodo, the mammoth, and the Tasmanian tiger go a bit better.
Harvard biologists have uncovered a truly bizarre frog species that sports extendable claws, much like those of a cat. This hairy frog breaks its own bones to produce claws that puncture through its toe pads, likely when it feels threatened. Some salamanders push their ribs through their skin to create protective barbs, but scientists have seen nothing quite like this claw mechanism before. 9 out of 11 frogs in this genus have this feature, and most of them live in Cameroon. A bee's life doesn't have to end after it stings you. Some of them can carefully take out the stinger without passing away later. The bee starts circling around until it loosens and takes out the barbed stinger. After that, it just flies away without leaving any marks on your skin. Unlike wasps, which are carnivorous and can be aggressive, bees are mostly peaceful creatures. They either stay in their hive or move from flower to flower, helping to spread life on Earth because they're crucial for pollination. For bees, stinging is a last resort because it means demise for them, so they can choose not to do it to save themselves. You probably have heard that a salamander can regrow its tail if it loses it completely. Well, Mexican tetra, also known as the blind cavefish, goes further and can grow back its heart. Well, sort of. It won't get a new, full heart overnight, but it can regenerate its tissues. Scientists decided it could be useful for us humans, as they're studying these fish, to see what's their secret, and why not all animals can play the same trick. Thorny devil dragon lizard surely agrees with the proverb, 2 heads are better than 1. The knob growing from its back serves as a false head to trick whoever is after it. They also have a special camouflage coloring and a scary spiny body for extra protection. And if it doesn't sound cool enough, they also drink with their feet. Now that's a handy feature when you live in the scorching hot desert. The water goes directly from their feet to their mouths through little grooves between scales. Meanwhile, some flies have eyes on stalks. It might sound strange, but those stalks are super useful. First off, they give the fly amazing vision, so good they can even peek around corners. Secondly, these stalks can be used as tools to push away rivals, and the longer the stalks and the wider the eyes are set, the more attractive the male fly appears to females. It's like their way of showing off that they're strong and have good genes. Spiders have some seriously awesome biological tricks up their sleeves, or legs. Spinning giant webs of incredible strong silk to catch bad guys is a real superpower, and Darwin's bark spider is especially good at it. This spider can weave massive webs that stretch across entire bodies of water, with anchor strands that reach up to 82 feet long. Scientists were curious about how strong this spider silk really is, so they put it to the test. They discovered that Darwin's bark spider silk is twice as tough as any other silk and 10 times stronger than Kevlar, which is an ideal body armor material. The web can handle insane amounts of kinetic energy before breaking, ensuring that no tiny insect or villain can escape its web. The real hulk of the animal world is the male horned dung beetle. It is the strongest animal in the world. This little powerhouse can pull 1,140 times its own body weight. Its secret to success is its desire to find a partner. Female dung beetles dig cozy tunnels under piles of dung for mating. When more than one male shows up, the competitors lock horns and wrestle each other out of the tunnel. Smaller beetles also have a chance, though, as they can move faster and slip into the tunnel more easily. Meanwhile, an alpine ibex has the superpower of defying gravity. Yep, it can scale steep rock walls just to get a lick of salt to complement its vegetarian diet. It's like when you storm the nearest grocery store for some late-night snacks. Back in the animal world, ibexes use concrete as an unconventional salt lick. Animals can't live without salt. They need it for their nerves and muscles to function properly. Wild goats have these rock-climbing skills thanks to the elastic and rubbery pads on their hooves. They help them grip the rocks, and a hard, sharper outer hoof edge hooks into the tiny rough spots on the rock surface. Now, the pistol shrimp is just 1.5 inches long, but it can snap its claws at a speed of 60 miles per hour. That creates a bubble in the water that forms a vacuum, and it sends a powerful water pulse that can stun prey. The snap is so intense that it generates a noise of 218 decibels, louder than a gunshot, and a temperature that is as hot as the sun's surface. There's even a brief flash of light. Some scientists are thinking of creating a mechanical version of the pistol shrimp to use in medical practice or for a new type of compression engine. Now, if you go hiking in the trails of the Pacific Northwest, keep an eye on the ground and any decaying trees for some bright yellow spots moving along. These are the keels of a dark centipede about 2 inches long. If you pick one up, it will curl into a spiral and release hydrogen cyanide, giving off a strong almond scent. This amount isn't enough to seriously mess up a human. It can just stain your skin or give you an uncomfortable feel if you're sensitive. So be sure to wash your hands after handling one. But the same amount can take down a bird or a rodent. Speaking of birds, crows can count vocally up to 4. They're a lot like human toddlers when it comes to learning to count and quickly identify the number of objects they see. Scientists trained 3 carrion crows to make a certain number of caws between 1 and 4 when they showed them a specific symbol or audio cue. All 3 birds mastered the task like pros, with some minor mistakes like 1 caw too many or too few. Crows can also plan ahead and communicate with each other in a structured way. Cowbirds, on the other hand, have secret passwords they use to recognize each other. They're a type of parasite bird, something like a cuckoo, and they lay their eggs in other bird species' nests. This means the little cowbirds can't learn their real parents' calls and would have trouble as adults to find a mate of their kind. That's why they have an inner mechanism where they recognize their species singing like some sort of secret password that only they know. Meanwhile, ghost crabs growl when they're around creatures they don't like or find threatening. They first show claws to intruders in their personal space to make them feel unwelcome. If that's not enough, they'll go for fearsome growling noises, like dogs. That sound is coming from rubbing their 3 elongated, hard teeth inside their stomach. Teeth in your stomach. Ghost crabs make the same noise when they're grinding up food. When a puffin feels like it could use a good scratch, nothing can stop it from solving the problem. Researchers noticed these birds pick up a small wooden stick to itch themselves. The authors think puffins might need sticks to knock off seabird ticks. Looks like it's more effective than using its own beak. There's an Indian elephant named Koshik who lives in South Korea and can imitate words just like parrots do. Koshik can pronounce the Korean words for yes, no, sit, lie down, and 4 other words. He puts his trunk inside his mouth and shakes it while exhaling to change the tone and pitch of the sounds he produces. If you can whistle with your fingers in the mouth, it's a lot like that.
Every species on Earth, you, me, and that nasty neighbor of yours, is destined to go extinct someday. Just like what happened to the woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. Stats aren't bright. Scientists say that 99% of all animals that ever lived are now extinct. Hey, what's that look on your face? Going extinct is not the end of the story. Now listen up. Mammoths might make the greatest comeback ever and even be the key to saving humanity. Nope, they won't give away free money so that we don't have to work anymore, but they can sorta help the weather situation on our planet. In the Arctic tundra, there's this ground called permafrost. It's like soil in the form of ice. Soil turns permafrost when it stays super cold for 2 years straight. But now, permafrost is actively thawing out, and it's bad news for, well, everyone. Because while thawing, it releases a lot of carbon into the air. But what if we had large animals like mammoths there today? They would churn up the soil. The ground would freeze more deeply in winter. And then, in summer, a layer of grass would help keep the ground cool and prevent the permafrost from melting. Some scientists think that's a great solution. So now there's a company in the US that's trying to bring mammoths back to life. Okay, you got me. Not actual mammoths, but a sort of hybrid between an elephant and 1% mammoth DNA. It would be a northern elephant. Getting mammoth DNA is easier than you might think. They actually only went extinct about 10 to 14,000 years ago. Scientists are hoping to have their first elephant-mammoth hybrid by 2027. Let's hope it doesn't turn into a real-life Jurassic Park. Ah, Australia. A nightmarish place, and a home to the most fascinating creatures on Earth. But here, the sad fate befell the Tasmanian tiger, also known as thylacine. Don't mix it up with the Tasmanian devil. That one is living and thriving. Nope, the thylacine was a marsupial predator that used to chill in Australia, South Tasmania, and New Guinea. It was a nocturnal who preyed on other marsupials, like kangaroos. In the 30s, the farmers suddenly claimed that thylacines were eating their livestock. Looking back at it now, that was probably an exaggeration. But humans started to hunt poor thylacines until they were all gone. And then it turned out that hunting away the important predator isn't the brightest idea. Who would have thought? You see, thylacines kept things in check by eating bad animals. So once they disappeared, the Australian wildlife was basically doomed. 35% of total mammal extinctions on Earth happened here. That's an awful world record. I know it sounds gloomy, but hey, maybe we can fix this. Remember that company we mentioned? It wants to bring back the thylacine too. Luckily, many thylacine embryos are still preserved in jars, like some creepy pickles. If we bring them back to Tasmania, this could help revive the entire ecosystem. Would you be happy to see them back in the wild? Me too. And I would also be happy to see you hitting those like and subscribe buttons so you can keep up with amazing facts all year round. We also have some huge dreams about tiny creatures. Take a trip to Mount Hotham Ski Resort in Victoria, Australia, and here you can find the mountain pygmy possum, a tiny bundle of cuteness. These guys are super rare. We even thought that they were extinct. All we had was their fossils. But then, some skiers spotted a possum in a log pile at the ski lodge in 1966. Imagine suddenly making a great discovery while chilling on vacation. These little possums can spend 7 months of the year sleeping under the snow. They wake up occasionally to eat some stored food, and then they wake up in the spring to eat even more, find a mate, and go back to sleep again. What a relatable fella. Since they've made it into this video, you can guess they're pretty endangered. There are less than 2,000 left in the wild. all because their current homes don't fit them that well. But hooray, we can help them too! You see, their ancestors lived in lowland forests about 20 million years ago. So maybe mountain possums could live better if we moved them there? Of course, we can't just take them to the woods and expect them to survive. Instead, scientists want to slowly release possums into the forest and check up on how they get on with it. Let's hope these cute creatures will adapt to woodland life. The southern gastric brooding frog, also called the platypus frog, was quite a unique creature. It was discovered in 1972 in Queensland, Australia. Back then, this fella shocked the scientists with its super weird birthing practices. Check this out. The mother frog swallows her eggs, turning her stomach into the womb. Then she doesn't eat at all for 6 weeks straight. I could never. Meanwhile, the tadpoles hatch in her stomach, start to grow, and eventually get so big that the mom literally has to breathe through her skin. And then she literally spews out her offspring left and right. Bleh. But this insane process is a great evolutionary achievement, which is why it drew everyone's attention. But the wonder didn't last long. By the mid-80s, all known species of these frogs vanished from their natural habitats. Why? We have no idea. There are many theories, but almost no evidence to back them up. In any case, over the years, these guys officially became extinct. But it all changed in 2013. Scientists started a groundbreaking project named the Lazarus Project. Now they want to resurrect these frogs to learn cool cloning techniques from them. Are you guys ready to copy their genetic preservation method? Yeah, me neither. But let's dive deeper. Literally go in the water. Meet the coelacanth. This creature lived in the oceans back when the dinosaurs roamed our planet, and didn't even notice the asteroids. These guys are the Methuselahs of the sea. They can live up to 100 years, and they don't even start thinking about leaving offspring until they're around 55. At least they've got plenty of time to live for themselves. We actually thought this creature had gone extinct about 65 million years ago. But then, the first Latimeria specimen was discovered off the coast of South Africa in 1938. Now they're known as living fossils. And these fish are enormous. They weigh around 200 pounds. They're also super stylish, with those lobe-fished paddles that make them look like disco balls. Oh, and they're great aerialists. Thanks to those versatile fins, they can even do headstands and swim belly up. The coelacanth is also a bit of a homebody. It's not very energetic and likes to live in underwater caves during the day, only coming out at night to snack on smaller fish and squid. Another animal who's literally me. Now we're trying our best to preserve this species, and I won't be surprised if it outlives us all. And finally, let's talk about the largest and most awkwardly looking flightless bird from New Zealand, the South Island takahe. The tale of the takahe started way back in the Middle Ages. Humans accidentally hunted them all away, and by the late 19th century, it seemed there were none of them left. But then, they were rediscovered in New Zealand in 1948. Poor guys did all they could to hide from us in the mountains, but we still got them. But it's different now. Since then, we've been trying our best to save them from extinction. There's a takahe recovery program going on, and it shows great results. They managed to greatly boost the number of birds in the wild. As of 2023, the takahe population has grown to around 500 birds. They're now considered nationally vulnerable, not nationally critical. It's a little progress, but progress nonetheless. Let's keep it up. If you're being approached by an aggressively looking dog, start yelling and screaming. It'll show your dominance and spook the animal off. Yes, this is a widespread myth, and no, it won't help you if you meet a canine that looks as if it's going to attack you. The best course of action in this rather scary situation is to stand still and avoid direct eye contact with the animal. You shouldn't run. It may only encourage the dog to start chasing you. If the animal attacks, drop to the ground and curl into a ball, protecting your head and neck with your hands. But what if you come across another, much more dangerous representative of the canine family? A wolf? Running away won't save your life. Wolves are much faster than humans, especially in the forest. Plus, as soon as you start running, the wolf's prey drive will immediately kick in. Instead, maintain eye contact with the animal at all times and never ever turn your back on it. While trying to escape, make sure the wolf remains in front of you. If the predator ends up behind you, its hunting instincts may come into play, so slowly back away while facing the animal. You might have heard that if you've been bitten by a snake, you should apply garlic to the bite area. Another misconception. Garlic has absolutely no effect on snake venom. Instead, try to remember the color and shape of the snake. It can later help doctors treat the bite and figure out what antivenom is needed. Also, remain still and as calm as possible. It can slow down the spread of venom. And, of course, immediately seek medical help. If you see a bear, fall down on the ground and pretend to have passed away. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work this way. First of all, you need to show the animal that you're not prey. Do not make any high-pitched noises and don't scream. This way, you may agitate the bear even more. If you wave your arms, do it slowly. If you decide to talk some sense into the bear, do it in a calm and low voice. Without taking your eyes off the bear, start to move sideways. It won't let you trip and go down. Do not rush or run away. Although at first sight, bears may look clumsy and heavy-footed, they're surprisingly good runners. Plus, these animals love chasing their prey. That's why if a bear charges after you, stop moving altogether. There's a misconception that bees can only sting once. But in reality, the problem is that honeybee stingers are barbed and can easily catch on their victim's skin. The stinger gets stuck. The bee can't free itself and doesn't usually survive such an accident. You need to remember that bees will protect their hives no matter what. And they can sting you even if you're just walking by. Dark colors can make bees more aggressive, since such hues make people look like their natural enemies. That's why if you're dressed in a black t-shirt, your chances of being stung by these insects are higher. If a swarm of bees is following you, hide in an enclosed or dark space. The lack of proper lighting will throw the insects off your track. Similar rules apply to wasp encounters. One of the worst mistakes you can make is wearing your long hair down and wearing dark clothes. Wasps are attracted to dark-moving objects, and your clothes and hair certainly fit this description. So if you suspect you may come across some wasps, put on some light-colored clothes and keep your hair tied up in a ponytail or bun. Contrary to popular belief, bathing a wasp sting in vinegar or baking soda won't help. Instead, apply some ice to the affected area. Gorillas are called the kings of the jungle, and not without a reason. They are leaders that tend to protect their family and land. They won't normally attack you if you behave obediently. So, upon meeting a gorilla, sit down. This way, you won't look large and threatening, towering over the animal. Try not to make loud noises and avoid direct eye contact. In case of an attack or approach, curl into a ball. Gorillas are proud animals. As a rule, they won't attack the weak and defenseless. Surprisingly, a wild kangaroo can pose a serious threat to a person. But it will only happen if you enter the animal's territory and it feels threatened. To avoid a conflict, cough. It's not a joke. Your coughs should be short and quiet. The kangaroo will consider it a sign of disease, and there's a chance it won't attack you. After that, back away slowly. This way, you will look smaller, therefore less threatening. Don't turn away and run. It will only provoke the animal. Remember that kangaroos are perfect jumpers, capable of catching up with you in a few moments. Of course, we must talk about sharks. The good news is that out of several hundred shark species existing on Earth, only about a dozen attack humans. If a shark gets interested in you, it will be extremely hard to break away. To not attract sharks, prevent blood or any other body fluids from getting into the water, sharks can feel smells at great distances. Also, when you go swimming, take off shiny jewelry or other reflective objects. Sharks are attracted to shiny things because they mistake them for fish scales. Don't turn your back on this predator and don't try to escape in panic. You will look like prey this way. Move slowly. Hitting the animal in its eyes and gills can only make it angrier and more determined to attack. Instead, start making bubbles. They're too noisy for sharks, and these animals don't like them. If you encounter a wild boar, it'll be a mistake to try to escape the animal by jumping into the water. Boars are actually good swimmers and can easily follow you if they feel threatened. Instead, start whistling or singing if you spot a wild boar walking nearby. If you've encountered a lion, maintain eye contact with the animal. Don't turn your back and don't move your eyes away. It will give the predator some time to attack. Try to look more massive than you actually are. Lift your arms and jack it up. If you look big and threatening, the animal will try to avoid the confrontation. Speak to the lion in a reasonably loud and confident voice. Such behavior isn't typical for a victim. You will baffle the predator, and it will perceive you as an irritating presence, which is better to stay away from. Elephants are clever and quite friendly animals, but they have been known to attack people. This is especially true about female elephant mothers with babies. If you have come across an elephant, pay attention to its body language. If the trunk is curled and the ears are pulled back, it means it might try to attack and crush you. If the animal approaches, don't run. Try to find something to serve as a barrier between you and the elephant. It can be a stone or a tree. Rhinoceroses have bad eyesight. That's why it's easy to frighten them and provoke them to attack. These animals' speed can reach 37 miles per hour, which is why it's really difficult to outrun them. The most foolproof way to escape from a rhinoceros is to hide behind a tree. It's a serious obstacle for the animal. Also, it's unlikely to follow you through bushes or high grass. Hippos may seem cute, but this image is very misleading. These animals can be extremely dangerous. Despite their weight, hippopotamuses can run at a speed of 18 to 28 miles per hour. Plus, it's quite easy to make them angry. So if the weather's hot, try not to come close to bushes. The level of water lowers during the drought season, and hippos hide in tall grass. To make the animal leave you alone, climb a tree, a rock, or a steep hill. Wait there until it goes away. Despite the widespread opinion, bulls react to movement, not the color red, or any other color. That's why if a bull is running at you, stay straight and still. Use your hat, t-shirt, or other clothes you have at hand as bait. When the bull runs up close enough, throw this object as far away from you as possible. The bull will change the direction and follow this new target. It turns out, starfish don't have a head. They are the head. When you first look at a starfish, you think it's got 5 arms. Scientists have always been curious about why starfish look like this, and in particular, where their heads are. Most animals, including us, have bodies that are bilaterally symmetrical, meaning you can split them down the middle and get 2 matching sides. But starfish, along with sand dollars and sea anemones, are different. They're radially symmetrical, meaning their bodies have identical parts spread out from the center. Starfish, or sea stars, are special because they have this 5-way symmetry, and you can divide them into 5 equal parts. To make this discovery, scientists used a technique called RNA tomography, which helps study genes. They focused on the genes controlling the outer layer, including the nervous system. Surprisingly, the genes associated with the head were active in the starfish's head and its arms. Yet, genes linked to the body trunk were hardly active. This suggests that starfish have a unique separation between their head and body. The study sparked new questions about how these creatures evolved and what their ancestors with trunks might have been like based on their fossil records. It also showed that genes active in the head of an acorn worm were also active in a starfish's skin, covering its entire body. These genes are the most active at the center of each arm, changing towards the arm's end to resemble genes found in the rear of other animals. Starfish lack genes for a torso. All this challenges traditional views on starfish anatomy. There's a rumor about Paul McCartney recording an ultrasonic whistle for his Shetland sheepdog at the end of the Beatles song, A Day in the Life. Dogs can hear ultrasonic sounds since their hearing ability is incredible. To move just one of their ears, dogs need to involve 18 muscles. It allows them to swiftly locate the origin of sounds, and it's another skill where they outshine us. Their awesome ears sometimes shadow their noses. Dogs' sense of smell is up to 100,000 times more acute than that of humans. While humans have around 5 million scent receptors, a bloodhound boasts up to 300 million. Another study proves that dogs and bottlenose dolphins may share a fascinating similarity with humans. They call out the names of loved ones when they become separated. This makes them the first non-human animals to do so. The research has uncovered that dolphins copy one another's signature whistles when they're separated from close pals. In the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program recordings, pairs of dolphins were held in separate nets, but they could still communicate with each other. Turns out, some of their chit-chats were mimicking the unique whistles of their dolphin buddies. Next up, we have flamingos with their peculiar dining habits. You often see them feeding with their heads positioned upside down. This distinctive behavior is linked to the anatomy of their mouths and the mechanics of maneuvering their long, elegant necks into the water. These birds are skilled filter feeders, employing their tongues as effective sieves to capture food. When a flamingo lowers its neck beneath the water, it positions its mouth essentially upside down. Then the bird closes its mouth and skillfully propels water through comb-like extensions on its beak. It also utilizes its tongue to expel the water while retaining all the gathered food. If you've watched the movie My Octopus Teacher on Netflix, you might already know that octopuses can bond with humans. But this time, we'll only focus on the anatomy of this creature. Octopuses have 3 hearts. One heart pumps blood throughout the body, and the other 2 tag teams send that blood to the animal's gills. Octopuses also have 9 brains. Each of their 8 tentacles has its very own mini-brain. These mini-brains allow each tentacle to move independently at lightning speed. There's a 9th brain in the mix, and this one oversees the entire octo nervous system. Opossums are intelligent, in a way, too. They're known for pretending to pass away when their life is threatened. When they face predators, opossums attempt to intimidate their foes by showing their teeth, hissing, and growling. Yet, when these tactics fall short, opossums resort to shutting their eyes, collapsing onto their side, and pretending to have passed away. To look more convincing, an opossum might drool, let its tongue hang out, and even excrete waste to enhance the illusion of a sudden demise. Remarkably, opossums can uphold this state for several hours, waiting until they're confident that the threat is gone. Monkeys can be loud when calling one another, but a howler monkey's shout can travel approximately 3 miles in specific situations. Males are usually louder than females. The thing is, the sound is created by pulling air through a space in an enlarged bone in the animal's throat. This bone is larger in males compared to females, and that's why males sound louder. Polar bears have black skin beneath all that fur. Their fluffy white coat is actually translucent. It only seems white because it bounces back visible light. The skin itself is jet black. These creatures are also impressive when it comes to swimming. They can hit speeds of up to 6 miles per hour in the water, which is pretty fast for such big creatures. They can swim for miles and keep going for hours. Their big paws are designed for swimming. They use them to paddle through the water while their back legs stay straight and act like a rudder. helping them steer. Since we visited polar bears, we might as well add a romantic fact about penguins here. Male Gentoo and Adelie penguins put themselves out there with proposals. They offer their potential mates precious pebbles, essential for building nests in the harsh Antarctic landscape. If the lady penguin accepts the pebble, they're in it for life, bonded and ready to mate. Another study has found that our adorable house cats share more than 95% of their genetic makeup with tigers. These little furballs also mimic many behaviors of their wild relatives, like marking territory with scents and the classic, stalking and pouncing during playtime. Biologically though, a cat's brain is kind of similar to a human's. We share identical emotional regions in our brains. Cats can also make up to 100 different sounds. Owls have eye tubes or cylinders. Their rod-shaped eyes don't do the eyeball moving. Our eyes can move in almost all directions. Owls have to make a full body or full head turn to look around, all because of night vision. To master the art of seeing in the dark, they need large corneas that can scoop up every bit of light. Most nighttime critters, like slow lorises or tarsiers, have enormous eyes to get the job done. But owls have small skulls on their agenda, so those big eyes couldn't swell out. Cockroaches are notorious for their survival skills, and a key reason is their unique brain structure. They have two brains, one in their head and a more basic one near their abdomen. They're so hard to get because these critters are incredibly quick to react. They have tiny hairs on their rear end that can feel the slightest breeze. When these hairs twitch, the cockroach doesn't waste time. It instantly switches to escape mode. Research shows that a cockroach can react in just 1/20th of a second. So by the time we turn on the light or grab something to target it, the cockroach is already speeding off. Cats can have dreams. Sometimes you can see your cat's whiskers twitching or its legs kicking while it's sleeping. This doesn't necessarily mean your pet is having a nightmare. We can look at human sleep to get a clue about what's happening with our feline friends. During REM sleep, our brains get super active, almost like when we're awake. That's also the prime time for dreaming. REM sleep is named this way because of the quick movements the eyes make under the eyelids. But while our eyes might be moving, the rest of our body stays still. The focus is on what's going on in our minds. This is true for cats too. Besides an occasional twitch, cats usually don't move much when they're asleep.
I have news for you. Rats are ticklish. Well, I thought it was news. Anyway, they have a so-called laugh center in their midbrain, and it activates when someone tickles the animals or when they engage in some fun and playful activities. Scientists discovered this in 2016 after tickling the rodents on their bellies and listening to their squeaky giggles. Now, hummingbirds are the only birds we know about that can fly backward. They mostly do it when they want to move away from flowers. And here's an animal that can't go backward, a kangaroo. They can hop around and cross great distances, but the structure of their strong rear feet and big tails prevent them from walking backwards. Narwhals are those weird creatures that look like some sort of sea unicorns. That horn on their head is not a tusk. It's a giant tooth that sticks out through the upper lip of male narwhals. This tooth is probably one of the tools that plays a role in attracting ladies. Now, flamingos are not actually pink. They're born gray, but throughout their life, they eat lots of algae and other foods that contain a red-orange pigment we know as beta-carotene, like in carrots. This pigment gets broken down and ends up in their skin and feathers, which is what makes them pink. They need to eat a lot of such food to stay like that, though. If we humans wanted to change our skin color, we wouldn't be able to eat enough food rich in beta-carotene to really turn pink, or in our case, maybe even orange. Sloths are really slow. All the jokes and memes about them are true, but they're also very skilled swimmers, and they move in the water around 3 to 4 times quicker than on land. They can do breaststroke just like people, and it's an important skill for them to have because they're tropical animals that mostly live in jungles, and those areas are often flooded. Tigers are the biggest members of the feline family, yup, even bigger than lions. And no tiger has the same set of stripes. Their coat is actually a camouflage that comes in handy when they need to find a good spot where their prey won't see them. Interestingly, their skin is striped too, not just the coat. Their stripes are as unique as our fingerprints. Now, even though they look kind of funny and innocent, you wouldn't want to bother a platypus. These wild animals are some of the few mammal species that can poison you. They have spurs on the tips of their back feet that can release venom. It's not potent enough to pose a life threat, but the sting can still be very painful and can cause swelling and other issues. When a ladybug needs to defend itself against potential predators, it starts bleeding from its knees. Now, it's not actual blood coming out of its joints. It's a certain chemical that smells bad and, therefore, repels predators. They have another mechanism that helps them survive in the harsh animal kingdom: their specific color. Predators really don't like the combinations of bright colors, such as red, orange, and black, because they know that creatures colored this way can taste awful. Roosters can get extremely noisy in the morning, but they don't go deaf because they don't even hear how loud their crowing can be. What keeps them safe is special built-in noise protection plugs. Hens have the same system that reduces the risk of hearing loss too. Not only do they have this protection, but they can also regrow cochlear hair ears if they get damaged in only a couple of days. Owls don't have eyeballs. They have something that's more like eye tubes, and they can't move them back and forth like we do with our eyeballs, which is why these birds have incredibly flexible necks. They're able to rotate their heads 270 degrees. For comparison, humans can only manage 180. That's why owls have a specific system of blood vessels in their heads. It delivers fresh blood to the brain if the bird turns its head too quickly and cuts off circulation. Just keep swimming. You may remember how Dory the blue tang sang this in Finding Nemo. Dory wasn't a shark, but that's a message some shark species need to take literally. Mako sharks, great whites, whale sharks, and some other kinds need to keep swimming. Otherwise, they'll stop breathing. We use our lungs for breathing, and some sharks use a method called buccal pumping. This means they swim with their mouths open. That way, they allow water to flow through their gills and thus extract oxygen. The most dangerous animal on our planet isn't a bear, a shark, or some toothy tiger. It's something way smaller: the mosquito. Not only is it extremely irritating, but it also transfers serious diseases such as yellow fever, malaria, or dengue fever. Annually, hundreds of thousands of people don't survive the battle with those diseases. Mosquitoes also outnumber every other creature across the globe, apart from termites and ants. Grizzly bears are incredibly strong animals with a bite powerful enough to crush a bowling ball. That's why you won't see them allowed in bowling alleys. Despite that, they're mostly light eaters. They're strong enough to make a meal out of whatever they come across, including a bison, moose, or elk, but they still like to munch on their fruits, nuts, berries, and even a small unfortunate mouse that gets lost and ends up in the predator's mouth. The inland taipan is the most venomous snake on the planet. We know it as the western taipan. It lives in Australia. Just one bite has enough venom to turn out fatal for at least 100 fully grown humans. And it can also do the job within only half an hour if you don't have anything to treat the bite right away. They say these snakes are mostly shy and they mind their own business. But like other animals, they will attack if they feel threatened or provoked. There's a kind of turtle that can stay alive for months under the ice by breathing through its behind. When it gets colder, some animals can't find safe places to stay, so they must survive harsh winter conditions wherever they are. And while bees get cozy in their nests and bears sleep in caves, painted turtles stay in their ponds that freeze over. Since the ice limits their access to air, they extract oxygen directly from the water and breathe through their behinds. Yes, that would be handy. It's well known that ravens are incredibly intelligent animals. They're excellent at solving problems, but it seems they also have impressive social intelligence. They're very in tune with their feelings as well as the emotions of their mates. If one raven in the group feels pessimistic, it's likely to bring the others down too. A real buzzkill. When they see a bird that doesn't like certain food and expresses it in a very vivid way, they lose interest in their own food as well. The pistol shrimp is one of the loudest animals in the world, even though it's tiny, only about 3/4 of an inch long. When it senses food, it opens its large claw that can grow as long as half its body length and lets him water it. Then it snaps the claw shut extremely fast, which shoots out a very strong jet of bubbles. These bubbles can stun or even finish the prey the shrimp is trying to catch. And when the bubbles pop, it produces a snapping sound, louder than anyone would expect. Crocodiles are even scarier than we thought, because many of them can gallop like horses. They probably inherited this ability from their ancient ancestors, who were as small as cats, had long legs, and could run at speeds of about 11 miles per hour. Smaller crocodiles probably gallop when something's after them, but caimans and alligators obviously don't need to use this skill. It's you who's more likely to gallop away when you see them.
Since the beginning of time, humans have shared the world with other species. Each one has a unique perception of what reality is like in terms of color, speed, and sound. Today, thanks to technology, we can more or less understand how our world sounds to animals. So how about we try living with their ears for a bit? Let's start with man's best friend, dogs. It is known that dogs experience time quite differently than our own. The best guess is that 1 human year equals 7 dog years. But when you call out their names, what exactly do they hear? Dogs experience our world slower than humans. That works both for their perception of time, but also for sound. Let's say you're calling Skipper to go for a walk. You're speaking at a normal pace like you do every day. But to Skipper, he's hearing you in slow motion, as if you just pressed the 0.75 speed on your Spotify app. You've also probably heard that dogs have a wider hearing range than humans, and that they can hear sounds from a very great distance. And this is true. An average human being has a hearing range from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. We hear better when we are younger and tend to hear less when we get older. Yep, this is actually scientific. But our dogs can hear up to 45 kilohertz, which is considerably more than us. Some dog breeds are known to be good hunters, and for that reason, they would need better hearing equipment. The thing is, dogs aren't as good as humans at distinguishing sounds. Humans easily know the difference between slow and go, while dogs, not so much. This is called frequency selectivity. The scientific explanation for this is that different parts of the cochlea answer to different frequencies. This is what a human ear looks like on the inside, and this is what a dog's ear looks like. The cochlea is this part right here that looks like the shell of a snail. It's made up of saltwater-like fluid. At the innermost center of this cochlea, there are tiny hairs that vibrate according to the frequency of sound we are receiving. Some hairs will only be activated by high-pitched sounds, while other hairs will be activated with lower notes. Dogs really prove to be humans' besties, as they also tend to lose their hearing with old age. You see, human hearing is at its prime when we're young. A study from the University of New South Wales says that a child can hear up to 24 kilohertz. When we're young, we can hear extremely high-pitched sounds, but this tends to decrease once we get older. The maximum hearing capacity of an older person can go as low as 8 kilohertz. I mean, this person probably can't hear the birds chirping or even the beeping of their microwave. Both in dogs and humans, the loss of hearing has to do with the loss of the tiny hairs in the cochlea. And what about cats? Cats can hear higher frequencies than dogs. Their hearing can go a little beyond 60 kilohertz. This is especially important since they hunt small rodents that make almost imperceptible noises to our human ears. But with a cat's hearing device, it can pick up on a mouse hiding in a bush over 100 feet away. The funny thing is that while dogs experience reality in slower motion than humans do, cats actually experience life about 9% faster than we do. You've probably heard that sound can also be classified as either infrasound or ultrasound. Here's what we'll do. I'll give you an example of a sound, and you'll tell me if you think it's infrasound or ultrasound. Would you say the sound of tectonic plates moving around is infra or ultrasound? The correct answer is infrasound. This one is tricky. The movement of ants in an underground tunnel. Also, infrasound. Infrasounds are low-range frequencies, anything ranging below 20 hertz, which means we can't hear them. But an elephant can. When you look at elephants, one of the first things you'll notice is their enormous ears. Well, everything is pretty gigantic, but the ears are impressive, especially in comparison to ours. Their ears allow them to pick up on sound waves that are much longer than the ones we pick up on. This means they can pick up on the movement of clouds and can physically hear when rain clouds are gathering. This is helpful to them because they will know when it's time to head down to water reservoirs, for example. Elephants also use infrasound to communicate with each other. They do that by pounding their feet on the ground. This sets up a powerful but hardly audible vibration. And since elephants are so awesome, they can pick up the vibration through nerve endings in their feet and ear bones. It works kind of like a bush telephone. Speaking of vibration, how do you think a snake can be enchanted by a flute if it doesn't have any ears? Well, the snake is not following the music. It's following the man's imperceptible foot tapping on the ground. You see, for humans, sound waves are usually carried by the air, but snakes, who move around through the ground, are connected to the environment by vibration. Snakes don't have eardrums, so their inner ear is connected to their jaw. Plus, the vibrations move from bone to bone inside a snake. This is called osteophony, which literally means that snakes listen with their bones. If this worked for humans, sound waves could literally send chills down someone's spine, huh? Okay, so humans listen through the air. Elephants and snakes can hear through the ground. How does hearing work for water animals? You could think that the water element impairs hearing, but not for dolphins. Dolphins emit extremely high-frequency sound waves that are classified as ultrasound. They emit clicking sounds to scan the water for food and other animals. Whichever way sound bounces back to them will help them identify what's in the water ahead and around them. To put it simply, dolphins see with their ears. This ability is called echolocation, and it's a form of navigation through sound. Well, you've heard of sonars, right? It's an instrument ships use to search for things underwater. A sonar emits very fast sound pulses that bounce off the seafloor and back. This way, they can detect the depth of the water. They can find shipwrecks and even discover geological formations. That's pretty much what dolphins do to locate themselves. Oh, and if National Geographic is right, humans can hear frequencies up to 100 kilohertz when we are diving underwater. This means we can hear almost the same way as dolphins. Can you imagine using echolocation to wade through the water? Scientists don't exactly know why this happens, but they have two guesses. It might have something to do with how sound travels differently through the water. It can also have to do with the way our ears receive sound underwater and how our brain interprets it. Now, it's not only dolphins that can use sound to navigate through life. Bats can also do that. Since bats tend to live in dark or even pitch-black environments, they can't really count on their vision. But they have such precious hearing equipment that they might not even need to watch where they are going. Even though a bat's brain is tiny, it can thoroughly map the entire environment it is in and easily locate prey. What about rodents? If you've ever seen a mouse or a chipmunk bouncing around, you've probably thought they looked a bit accelerated. Here's a fun fact. Compared to humans, a chipmunk experiences reality at half the speed as we do. So what looks super fast and clumsy to us is seemingly pretty chill from that rodent's point of view. In terms of hearing, A mouse's hearing can go as high as 91 kilohertz, which is very, very high. Quite fascinating, huh?
Have you ever wondered what animals looked like when they first appeared in the ancient oceans over 500 million years ago? Well, scientists have been scratching their heads about this for more than a century. And now, they believe that they finally found the answer. So let's take a look at their discovery. You see, our ancient ancestors probably lived 600 or 700 million years ago. They were soft-bodied, so unfortunately they didn't leave any fossils behind. Scientists decided to uncover the secrets of these ancient creatures by comparing them to all the animals that exist today. First, we need to ask ourselves, what is an animal? Well, we know that they're incredible creatures with heads, innards, muscles, and brains. And we know that humans are part of this animal gang too. We're called bilaterians, and we have all these cool features that evolved around 500 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion. But there are also awesome creatures with very simple body plans. We've got jellyfish, sea anemones, sponges, ctenophores, and many more. They may not have fancy brains or muscles like us bilaterians, but they still have the essential qualities of animal life. For example, they develop from fertilized eggs into living beings. So, researchers decided to take a look at them to figure out which group was the earliest branch on the tree of life. To solve this mystery, they used a technique called DNA sequencing. They looked at the genes of these animals. The similarities and differences in the genes help scientists understand how creatures are related and how they evolved. By comparing DNA, scientists could piece together their evolutionary family tree. The list narrowed down to two candidates: sponges, which are basically lazy filter feeders, and comb jellies, which are fierce predators cruising through the oceans. But the controversy remained: who came first? Sponges may seem to be simple fellows. After their free swimming phase, they settle down and filter tiny food particles from the water. No nerves or muscles for them, but their hard parts make excellent scrubbers. For a long time, scientists believed that sponges were the very first branch of the animal family tree. They thought that before anything else, there had been these tiny single-celled creatures called protozoans. Then these protozoans came together and formed colonies that eventually evolved into sponges. And from there, sponges became the ancestors of all animals, including humans. But hold on. Meet the comb jellies, those mesmerizing creatures you often see in aquariums. They may resemble jellyfish, but they're not even close relatives. Instead of squishing through the water, ctenophores use rows of beating cilia, like combs, to propel themselves. You can spot a sea gooseberry, a common ctenophore, along the California coast. It's about an inch in diameter and quite fascinating to observe. Anyway, now we have two contenders. To find out whether sponges or comb jellies were the first, the biologists turned to an unexpected superhero: chromosomes. You see, each species has its own unique chromosome number and gene distribution along those chromosomes. For example, humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So scientists didn't just look at the genes each animal had, they also checked where those genes were located on their chromosomes. You see, as animals evolve, their chromosomes rearrange, and genes move around. Once they move, it's really hard for them to go back to their original spots. So, the clever biologists figured that the animal with the least shuffling of genes on their chromosomes must have appeared first. They basically had to find a puzzle with the least shuffled pieces. To crack this mystery, the scientists compared the gene placements in sponges and comb jellies to their closest single-cell non-animal relatives. These single-cell relatives were like cousins to the first animal and held clues about the original genome. The closer an organism's genome was to the original, the less it had changed and the more likely it was to be the sister. So the research team discovered something incredible. Despite more than 500 million years of independent evolution, sponges, jellyfish, and many other invertebrates share similar sets of genes on their chromosomes. It basically meant that animal chromosomes evolved slowly. It also gave the researchers a golden opportunity to digitally reconstruct the chromosomes of the ancient common ancestor. There was another big problem, though. We had no idea what the chromosomes in comb jellies looked like until the year 2021. That's when brilliant biologists finally cracked the code. They discovered the chromosome structure of a particular comb jelly with a pretty complicated name. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try. Anyway, let me tell you, it was like nothing they had seen before. Strangely, the chromosomes of these comb jellies were totally different from the chromosomes of other animals. The scientists were perplexed. Is it because they had changed a lot over millions and millions of years? Or is that because they actually appeared before all other animals? It took scientists some time and a lot of hard work to fill in those missing pieces. And guess what? Finally, they found the answer. It turns out the first branch of the animal tree belonged to comb jellies. Sponges came next, and then all the other animals, including us humans. So let's discuss this little funny creature from which we all originated. Jellies, including comb jellies, are simple creatures with few specialized organs. They can sense chemicals in the water to find their food, and they even have a special structure called a statocyst that helps them orient themselves in the water. Comb jellies are also known as ctenophores. They're cute little creatures that live all around the ocean, from the North and South Poles to the sunny equator. They can be found from the surface all the way down to the deepest part of the sea. These amazing animals belong to the group of invertebrates, which means they don't have a backbone like we do. They come in various sizes depending on the species. And by the way, despite their extraterrestrial appearance, their soft bodies are perfectly designed for their underwater world. They're more than 95% water, which makes them lightweight and agile. Comb jelly is a fascinating creature with an oval shape and 8 rows of tiny comb-like plates. It uses these combs to swim gracefully through the water. And guess what? When it moves, its combs create a magical rainbow effect as they diffract the light. It's like swimming through a shimmering prism. But they aren't as cute or harmless as they seem. In reality, comb jellies are voracious predators. They love to feast on other jellies, and some of them can even stretch their stomachs to hold prey that's almost half their own size. So, their diet consists of other comb jellies, as well as some salps and siphonophores. Talk about having a big appetite. And here's another interesting fact. Even though comb jellies got a head start in branching off from the tree, both they and sponges have been evolving since then. They've been on their own journeys, adapting to their environments and developing new features over time. It's a reminder that evolution is an ongoing process. It also shows how important it is to take care of these unique creatures and their environment. Changes in jelly populations can be a sign of bigger issues, so it's crucial to protect their habitats. But why is all this so important? Well, these discoveries help us understand how animals have developed. By studying the early branches of the animal tree of life, we can understand about the characteristics and traits that all animals share. For example, how they sense their surroundings, eat, and move. We can also learn all sorts of cool things about how animals first emerged and evolved into the wondrous array of species we have today. The scientists were really excited about their discovery. They knew that they had found a relic from a very ancient time. So, there you have it. This discovery is like a magical time machine that allows us to peer deep into the past. It's a treasure trove of knowledge about the origins of animal life. I'm sure scientists will find out more interesting things in the future, so stay tuned.
Wait, don't tell me that life on Earth has bubbled for about 3.5 billion years, and the biggest creature we got is the blue whale? I mean, not bad, but that doesn't sound nearly as fun as those cool giant creatures you get to see in movies. Yeah, you recognize the iconic roar here. It appeared on TV, in comic books, in video games, and in cinema. I mean, come on. It even got its own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on its 50th birthday. So, what would it take to get good old Godzilla from the TV screen to our streets? And we're talking about the beast that's really gigantic. In the original film from 1954, Godzilla was thought to be 164 feet tall. This was the perfect height for the monster to just peer over the biggest buildings in Tokyo at the time. But as further movies came, Godzilla became bigger and bigger. In theory, this would be the biggest animal that could exist and not end up crushed by the gravitational field of our planet. Even if we're talking about some tiny Godzilla of, let's say, 14,000 tons. To take the gravitational force of our planet and carry such weight, Godzilla must have some incredibly strong bones. And as an object gets bigger, its volume will actually increase faster than its surface area. Okay, wait, let's start small. So, cells are the building blocks of life, and they come in all shapes and sizes. But the thing is, cells have a problem when they try to grow too big. As they grow, their surface area, the outside, doesn't keep up with their volume, which means the inside. It's like having a big mouth but a tiny stomach. You can't digest all the food you want to eat. Why haven't I learned that already? Especially when I open my fridge for a midnight snack. So, if cells get too big, they can't get enough nutrients in and waste out fast enough. It would be like living in a very big house, but with just one tiny door to go in and out. Plus, that's not their only problem. Cells also need to be able to divide and replicate, and this task gets tricky as they get bigger. They need this thing called microtubules for that. It's sort of like a skeleton that gives them structure. But don't worry, evolution is a foxy little thing. There are some cells out there, like a specific type of invasive algae, that have found ways to break the rules and get really big. And they don't even need to divide to do that. This algae could pass as an aquatic fern that has fronds up to 31 inches long. But what you're looking at is just one big cell. It has multiple nuclei, though, which are like the control centers of cells. Plus, there are even some bacteria that are living in a symbiotic relationship with the organism, which means they help each other out when necessary. It's like having a bunch of different rooms inside one big house, with some roommates living there that help around from time to time. Then there's a monster algae known as the sailor's eyeball, which is like a giant ball of green slime. It can grow up to 2 inches in diameter, but is also considered to be just a single cell. My personal favorite would be this one. Again, we're talking about a single cell, but check out its stem and cap. It looks like a tiny little umbrella. It can grow up to 4 inches tall, which is definitely not bad for a single cell. Most cells are too small to see with the naked eye, but these fellas don't hesitate to break the rules. Now, when it comes to animals getting really big, there's a limit to their size. It's like trying to build a really tall tower. Eventually, it'll become too heavy and the base won't be able to support the weight anymore. Similarly, when an animal gets really big, its bones and muscles have to evolve to support all that weight, and it becomes more and more difficult to do so. In one of the movies, Godzilla was 390 feet tall. At that size, it would be really difficult for its heart to pump blood to its brain. And if it was a reptile, Godzilla would need to spend all of its time lying in the sun to stay warm. So we'd have to hide in the shadows, hoping some bigger animals that live in warm areas could keep it full. If Godzilla was a mammal, though, it would generate too much body heat and end up cooking itself. The biggest land animals we know of were sauropods, a type of dinosaur with a really long neck and tail. They could grow up to 131 feet long and weigh up to 70 tons, which could be as heavy as 10 elephants. Evolution was pretty efficient when it had to come up with its body plan. Sauropods ate plants. They had a smart way of eating that allowed them to stay in one spot and still find enough food. They could move their long necks around to reach plants, so they didn't have to walk around too much or waste too much energy. Yeah, my kind of folks. That's impressive, but let's get realistic. Not many giant animals are happy to eat salad for dinner. If you had a giant beast such as Godzilla, you can expect it to go after its prey. And that becomes too hard for its body to support all that weight and perform all the necessary activities. The largest meat-eating dinosaurs were still pretty big, but not as big as the sauropods. The biggest one we know of is a fella called Spinosaurus, which was about 50 feet long. It managed to survive by eating fish and some other creatures that lived in the water. It would be so cool to have Godzilla in real life, if you have some safe basement where it won't find you, of course. But it's not likely some animal could really get bigger than our beloved sauropod. At least, not without running into some serious physical limitations. And have you ever wondered how big a plant could get? It turns out some trees have already reached amazing heights, such as the General Sherman, the largest living tree on the planet. It's more than 275 feet tall and has nearly 53,000 cubic feet of wood. It's gigantic, but still a little bit smaller than the Lindsay Creek French tree, the biggest tree ever recorded. It was a coast redwood 390 feet tall and had a volume of more than 90,000 cubic feet, which is as big as some skyscrapers. But it ain't easy for plants to get big either. When they're tall, it's tricky for them to get water from the roots to the leaves. Redwoods have a couple of tricks up their sleeves, though. For example, they absorb moisture from fog through their leaves. Plus, they have a wide base that gives them more support. If we want to build taller buildings, we also need to think about the challenges plants face, like how to build a good base that will support the structure and transport water and nutrients. If we're not just looking for height, we can take a peek at other massive organisms on our home planet, such as Pando. This is a male aspen forest in Utah that covers 107 acres and is basically one giant organism. It weighs almost 6,000 tons and is one of the biggest organisms on Earth. Perfect salad bowl for Godzilla. I mean, plants aren't the only organisms that can grow to massive sizes. There are fungi, like the honey mushroom, that can grow into a network of tiny threads called hyphae. They tend to spread out over big areas, and it's like a pretty big underground web, connecting everything together. One specimen in Michigan covers 90 acres and weighs about 400 tons. Now that's a lot of mushrooms.
Take a look at these animals. There's a deer, a dolphin, a squirrel, and a dinosaur? You've already figured out I'm about to ask you what they all have in common, right? The boring answer is they've all lived on this planet at a certain point in time. Blah, 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 sure. What's even more surprising about their common features is their coloration. On that note, let me tell you about Abbot Thayer and his amazing theories on animal coloration. He was a portrait painter extraordinaire, but he also had a thing for the colors of the natural world. He came up with some pretty cool ideas about how animals can stay hidden from predators or prey, and they're still relevant today. One of his most famous theories is called countershading. Basically, animals are painted by nature so that the parts that get the most light from the sky are the darkest, and vice versa. It's like they're wearing the perfect outfit to match their environment. And let me tell you, this technique is not just for fashion-savvy animals. It's also used by ships to avoid detection. Thayer and his friend even got a patent for it. Thayer also came up with the idea of background blending, which is when an animal or object is painted to match the colors of its surroundings. Think of it as a natural camouflage suit. Thayer didn't stop there, though. He also proposed a theory on something called disruptive or dazzle camouflage. This is when an object is painted with a crazy pattern to make it harder to judge its distance or speed. It's like when you're trying to hit a piñata that's moving all over the place and you can't quite get your timing right. Think about it. If you're a shark swimming beneath the surface of the ocean and you look up, you're going to see the bright sky and the lighter colored ocean surface. If you're a prey animal swimming on the surface, your lighter belly will blend in with the bright sky, while your darker back will blend in with the deeper water. It's not just aquatic animals that use countershading to their advantage. Land animals like deer and rabbits have lighter bellies and darker backs, which helps them blend in with the dappled light of the forest floor. And let's not forget about birds. Many birds have countershading on their feathers, which helps them blend in with the sky when seen from below and the ground when seen from above. Some creatures out there have a way of warning others that they're not to be messed with. Yeah, it's called aposematism, a fancy word for using bright colors or markings to let predators know that they're toxic or just downright unappetizing. Take the skunk, for example. That broad white stripe on its back is like a neon sign that says, "Don't get too close or else you'll regret it." And those yellow-banded poison dart frogs? They're walking billboards for their own poison with their bright and graphic colors, letting everyone know that they're not to be fooled with. Even wasps use the power of bright colors to signal to potential threats that they're packing a sting. And you know those cute little ladybugs? The brighter they are, the more toxic they can be. Who knew that something so adorable could be so deadly? It turns out that white, yellow, red, and black are the most effective warning colors in the animal kingdom. Just like how traffic signs caution drivers, these bright markings are nature's way of saying, "Watch out, buddy!" If you ever come across a critter with some serious bling, just remember, they're not trying to be fashionable. But how come some animals have evolved to use bright colors and others didn't? It's a question that's been baffling scientists for a long time. Thankfully, one theory coming from a team of researchers at the University of Arizona has uncovered some interesting insights into this colorful mystery. It turns out that the function of an animal's vibrant coloring is strongly linked to the activity patterns of its evolutionary ancestors. So species that use their bright colors to attract mates are usually descended from ancestors that were active during the day. Meanwhile, those that use their colors to ward off predators usually had ancestors that were active at night. It seems that animals have evolved to use their colors in the most advantageous way possible. Now, you may be wondering how vivid coloration even came to be in the first place. Well, it seems that early in their evolution, most species started out pretty plain and drab. But over time, bright colors evolved across many different lineages because they helped animals survive and reproduce. But not all bright colors are created equal. The researchers found that vividly colored lizards and birds usually use their coloring as a mating signal to attract partners, while colorful amphibians and snakes often wear their colors as a warning sign for predators. And get this, many of these amphibians and snakes are diurnal now, or active during the day, but their ancestors were actually nocturnal, active at night. So, there's no clear connection between warning colors and present-day activity patterns. Mother Nature sure is creative when it comes to helping animals adapt and survive in the wild. But there are some creatures out there that could take the award for the weirdest animals any day. Have you ever stopped to think about what it would be like if we could see through all the layers that protect our internal organs? Because that's exactly what has happened with the glass frog. Imagine you're strolling through the lush rainforest of Central and South America, and you come across a tiny little frog perched on a leaf. From above, it looks like your average run-of-the-mill frog, but if you flip it over, you'll see all its organs on display, heart, intestines, and all. You might be wondering why on earth these frogs have evolved to be see-through. It turns out that their super thin translucent skin actually helps them blend in with their surroundings too. When light shines on them from above, their silhouette becomes all jumbled up and difficult for predators to decipher. And let's face it, when you're surrounded by vibrant greenery, a green topcoat is a perfect camouflage. But what about those transparent legs? Well, they help to blur the outlines of the frog's body, making it even tougher for predators to recognize their shape. I, for one, had no idea penguins also came in yellow. One wildlife photographer stumbled upon a sight that left him gobsmacked on a remote island in the southern Atlantic Ocean. He captured some amazing images of a yellow king penguin that had everyone on the beach flapping with excitement. There were 120,000 birds on that beach, and this was the only yellow one there. Scientists are scratching their heads as to how this coloration happened naturally. They think it's a form of leucism, which is basically an animal's inability to produce the proper pigments for its natural coloration. But they're not entirely sure. All king penguins produce small amounts of this yellow pigment naturally, but in this particular bird, it seems to be the only pigment the animal could produce. Talk about standing out from the crowd, am I right? There are some colors, though, you'll rarely find in the animal kingdom. According to some polls, blue is one of, if not the most popular colors amongst people. Most animals, however, have a tough time sporting this shade. Some animals get their pigment from the food they eat, like how flamingos turn pink from eating shrimp, or how goldfish can alter their golden hue based on their diet. But unfortunately, there's no true blue pigments in plants, so animals can't turn blue through their food. Instead, they have to get creative. For instance, some animals make structures that change the wavelength of light to appear blue. The blue morpho butterfly is a great example of this. Its wing scales are shaped in ridges that cause light to blend in such a way that it reflects only the blue color. If the scales were shaped differently, the butterfly would lose its beautiful blue color.
It's just a regular day. As usual, you're taking a shower before starting to get ready for work. Everything is going as planned. Until it isn't. One clumsy move, some water spilled on the floor, and you're flapping your arms in the air, your body nearing the floor with frightening speed. Everything goes black. First thing you hear is a high-pitched whining in your head. Ouch, your head. Ugh. You carefully get up. There's no blood, and that's good. An even better thing is that the annoying noise stops abruptly. Holding your head, you leave the bathroom and almost stumble over your cat, Milo. He hisses, and then a clear voice in your head says, "Clumsy loser." Huh? You whip your head around in fear, but you see no one. It's just you and Milo? You've probably hit your head more than you thought. You shrug and make your way to the kitchen. Milo follows you. You hear ceaseless grumbling. Why can he sleep in the bedroom and I'm banned from there? Why haven't I gotten my meal yet? This leather creature's too lazy. Shall I scratch the sofa or leave a mouse on his pillow? The first thought that comes to your mind is, we have mice in the house? The second is more relevant. I'm losing my marbles. Great! Acting on autopilot, you pour some milk into Milo's bowl and fill another one up with some dry food. The cat doesn't seem to be satisfied with how fast you are, if his, "Oh, for goodness sake, move it, man," is anything to go by. Okay, now you'll have to live with the knowledge that your beloved cat Milo actually has the personality of a grumpy old man. Duh. You decide to lock yourself in the bathroom again because you're starting to get overwhelmed. You sit down heavily on the toilet lid and almost jump a foot in the air when you hear someone arguing loudly. After looking around, you find out that, apparently, there are not only mice, but also cockroaches in your house. Just great. At the moment, you're staring at a couple of these insects, which seem to be having a fight. At least, one of them is accusing the other of... Wait, what? Cheating? You've heard enough. You're about to dash out of the bathroom when you hear a bang. In the living room, you find your cat on the floor under a smashed flower pot. The worst thing? He seems to be really hurt. He won't stop whimpering and meowing.
Ugh, it hurts! It hurts! My paw! Ouch! Ouch! But the sofa can't remain unscratched today.
You grab Milo, shove him into the carrier,
Hey, watch out, you leather bag!
and head for the clinic. On the way, you have to concentrate hard to block out the noise of countless voices assaulting you. The waiting area at the vet is full. Uh-oh, you're in for a long wait. Half an hour later, your head is ready to explode. You found out that yellow python is suspiciously interested in the hamster a girl in the corner is clutching to her chest.
So fat, so pretty.
The hamster's worried about his stash of nuts.
Where did I hide them? Where?
A tiny dog that has come with an elderly lady is anxious about needles.
If that sharp thingy comes near me once again, they'll regret it. I'll destroy everyone on my way.
Finally, it's your turn. The vet invites you to her office, and you bend to pick up Milo when a desperate-looking young man bursts into the room.
My puppy! What's wrong with him?
The vet looks at you apologetically, but you're focused on the puppy. It looks weak, but you manage to figure out the words,
Chocolate. Yum.
when you tell the vet and the anxious owner that the pooch has eaten some chocolate, which is basically poison for dogs. They give you a funny look and disappear into the doctor's office. Sometime later, the guy exits, holding the dog that looks way better than before. When they leave, the vet turns to you. How did you figure out the dog had eaten chocolate? Uh-oh, here it comes. You decide that honesty is the best strategy and tell the vet that you can understand what animals say. Of course, she doesn't believe you. You have to try hard to persuade her. But with the help of 2 other dogs, Milo and an elderly squirrel, you manage to make her believe you. When you get back home, your head is spinning and you're pretty hungry. All you can think about is some fried eggs and bacon. Yum. Wait, bacon? But it's... Uh-oh. Apparently, starting today, you're a vegan. Anyway, that's when it starts. You don't know how it happens, but you become famous overnight. The next morning, a loud noise wakes you up, and it doesn't sound like animals talking to you. You look out of the window and see crowds of people gathered around your house. Some of them are reporters, but others are pet owners that have come to ask you for help. Milo is not happy. While grumbling nonstop and calling you names, he bites your leg and retreats under the stairs. And you go out of your house to talk to people and answer the reporter's questions. In the evening, you're exhausted, but also happy. You've saved several animals today. They had serious health and psychological problems their owners couldn't figure out on their own. Lying in bed in the dark, you think of how you can use your ability. That's when your plan takes shape. Soon, you become the most renowned animal care specialist in the world. You listen to animals talking about their problems, talk them out of depression, and help them resolve misunderstandings with their owners. TV shows invite you for interviews. Your YouTube channel is growing every day. People recognize you on the street and ask you to take pictures with them. You travel the world, help endangered species, and give lectures. You open vet clinics all over the globe and invite the best professionals to work there. You never feel lonely. There's always someone to talk to or listen to. At least some birds when you're walking in the park, or some fish when you're having a rare moment of rest on the beach. At the same time, you've come to realize how many animals are begging for help, but no one can hear them. You decide to take up the role of their speaker. It turns out you're now famous not only in the human world, but also in the world of animals. They're grateful, and in return, they start informing you of different natural disasters that are about to happen on the planet. You've heard that animals can predict earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. And if before, people had to try hard to notice some unusual behavior of certain species, now animals just pass you information about what's going to happen and where. With time, you notice that you spend less time among people and more time with animals. Together, you plan campaigns against zoos, circuses, and other places where animals are kept against their will. And then, one day, the unthinkable happens. You're returning home when a black van stops next to you. A few big masked guys grab you and push you inside. The doors close behind your back. Inside, you find out that several influential people aren't happy with your activity. You realize that this trip isn't going to end well. The guys blindfold you and lead you somewhere, but at one moment, you lose your footing and hit your head on something hard. You open your eyes. Milo is standing over you, looking at your lying body rather indifferently. And then, the most terrible thing happens. He meows what sounds like a whole sentence, turns away, and walks out of the bathroom. And you don't understand a meow of what he's saying. Was it all just a dream?
Okay, let's face it, we humans are pretty ordinary. I mean, we're no superheroes with superpowers, right? What, you didn't get the memo? But the animal world has a bunch of superheroes. Some creatures live forever, and those who seem to not care about the laws of gravity. Critters that are immune to venom, and those that can run on water. And some of them will send shivers down your spine. So the first superpower on the list is the ability to live without water. Kangaroo rats can get by without water for years. They actually don't mind living without any water. Humans, on the other hand, can only survive 3 days without water. Humans 0, kangaroo rats 1. These little buddies live in extremely arid desert areas and have to get water from the seeds and plants they eat. And although it may sound a bit disturbing, kangaroo rats also know how to extract water from their urine before they set off on a bathroom trip. This way, they don't waste a single drop of precious moisture. Well, that would come in handy at sporting events. Now let me introduce you to the Peter Parker of the animal world. Yep, seems like Spider-Man is real, but not human. Meet a gecko lizard, or simply gecko. This critter has a marvelous ability to climb up all kinds of vertical surfaces and can even go for a walk on the ceiling. This gravity-defying feat is possible thanks to the lizard's unique foot pads covered with tiny hairs. They can cling to almost any kind of surface, no matter whether it's smooth, hard, rough, or soft. One more fun fact about these guys is that they lack eyelids, so they always keep an eye wide open for what's going on around them. If you wonder how they keep their eyes protected, here's the answer. Their eyes are covered with a transparent membrane, the cornea. Sure thing, they can't close their eyes, and if they have something in their eye, they simply lick it off. Right, they clean their eyeballs by licking them. I guess that's another superpower. Any supersonic superpowers here? Sure. A 1-inch long subtropical shrimp disorients its prey with a sonic boom. Despite its modest size, the pistol shrimp is one of the loudest marine animals. When the shrimp snaps its claws, it creates a sound as loud as a sonic boom. Naturally, this sound stuns the prey, and the shrimp can catch it without too much effort. Now, in the comic world, there's venom. In the animal world, there's a guy that can be called anti-venom. Opossums are known for their handy trick of pretending to have passed away when a predator attacks them. But that's not the end of the story. These guys are also immune to rattlesnake and pit viper venom. The secret is a peptide that helps opossums neutralize dangerous chemicals. This is the reason why snakes are a favorite treat on opossums' diet. There's one curious thing they have on their diet: ticks. One opossum can hoover up about 5,000 ticks per season, and most of them are picked off their own bodies. Now, imagine a fish that is so notorious that it's called a dangerous fish. It's mabenga, and it literally translates to dangerous fish in Swahili. This monster lives in freshwater and doesn't mind having a crocodile for lunch. Not a whole crocodile, but mabenga can take a bite out of them. But to be honest, these guys are intimidated by the crocodiles, the same way the crocs are intimidated by them. Now, you're watching this video on some gadget, right? Well, we all owe the gadgets we have to the electric eels in some way. I mean, all gadgets have batteries, and eels contributed a lot to the invention of an electric battery back in 1800. I know, the batteries have unrecognizably changed since then, but still, the first electric battery ever was invented thanks to electric eels. Anyway, if you see one of them and want to thank them for their magnificent invention, don't do that. Thing is, they can deliver shocks up to 860 volts. You don't want to experience that. Now let's talk about the Count Dracula of the animal kingdom. Nope, I'm not talking about bats. I'm talking about the fanged vampire fish. These fish are known as payara and have two long fangs protruding from their lower jaw. Here's why some people associate them with vampires. Hippos are the beauty gurus, since they know how to save a fortune on skincare. Living under the harsh African sun, these animals secrete a sweat-like red oily substance that evaporates and keeps the animals' bodies cool. Besides, the fluid works as a moisturizer, sunscreen, and antibiotic all in one. But they're not the only ones with such a superpower. Mantis shrimp know how to produce natural sunscreen too, but they use it for eye protection. It's all about amino acid pigments, and these pigments act as special filters that contribute to their sharp vision too. That's what I call multitasking. Meerkats have dark patches around their eyes which makes them look even cuter. But these black circles aren't there just to make these buddies more adorable. They also function as built-in sunglasses. The dark fur on the patches blocks the blazing sun, and as a result, meerkats can gaze directly at the sky. On top of that, the sentry, a meerkat that watches out for birds and other predators, can easily see danger coming and alert its mates. Wild goats are famous for their climbing skills, but the alpine ibex from northern Italy is the champion. This critter can climb nearly any vertical surface, defying several physical laws in the process. Interestingly, the animals that do walk on the steepest cliff walls are typically mother goats with their little ones. Large males prefer to keep their distance and use flat horizontal surfaces. Smart guys. Some animals protect themselves with venom or nasty bites, while others use chemical tricks for protection. Listen to this. Some species of millipedes produce hydrogen cyanide and exude it when they feel threatened. Hydrogen cyanide is odorless but highly toxic. One little millipede can't seriously hurt you, but you may have burns or even blisters if your skin is sensitive. Plus, to make the picture even scarier, some millipedes glow in the dark. So watch out, and if you see a crawling spot of light at night, run away as fast as you can. When the bombardier beetle feels threatened, it sprays scorching liquid from the tip of its abdomen with a loud popping sound. As soon as the beetle senses danger, a chemical reaction starts in special reservoirs in its abdomen. The heat from this process nearly reaches the boiling point and also produces special gas that triggers the ejection. This super protection is usually fatal for the attacking insects. I guess so. Plumed basilisk lizards have an uncanny ability to run on water. First of all, their hind feet are equipped with long toes which have fringes of skin that can spread out in the water. As a result, a bigger surface of the lizard's foot comes into contact with water. Then, when it runs on water, it pumps its legs incredibly fast. This creates little pockets of air that prevent the animal from drowning by keeping it on the surface. Now, fleas can be annoying, but it doesn't make them any less amazing. These tiny critters can leap about 50 times their body length. If people could do the same, we would be jumping about a quarter of a mile into the air. Well, let's try it. The most curious thing about fleas' astonishing ability is that they take most of the power for leaps from their toes, not knees. So, what's your favorite animal superpower? I vote for the kangaroo rat. I don't like standing in lines for the bathroom.
The sky suddenly turns orange. All you can see as you look up are millions of butterflies. You just got lucky to witness the spectacular natural show. The annual migration of monarch butterflies. Every fall, as the days get shorter and the temperatures go down in the northeastern US and Canada, these beautiful creatures leave their summer breeding grounds. They travel up to 3,000 miles to Mexico and never come back. Their perfect overwintering ground is high in the mountains. Millions of monarch butterflies are safe there in the canopy of OML fir trees. Once the winter is over, it's time for them to go back up north. They make a stopover around Texas to mate and lay eggs on milkweed plants. A few days later, these eggs turn into caterpillars that feed on the plant until they transform into grown-up butterflies. Now, it's their turn to continue the journey up north until they find a new breeding ground. This way, generations keep changing en route, and it may take up to 5 of them to get to the final destination back in Canada. It's a natural mystery how the butterflies traveling south live up to 8 months traveling with the air currents. The same species going back completes its life cycle in 5 to 7 weeks. Scientists still don't know why the monarchs migrate and how they find their way. It could be connected with the blooming of milkweed plants, their primary food source. They probably find their way around based on the position of the sun. Humpback whales are real champions when it comes to migration and size among mammals. They cover a distance of up to 5,000 miles following their lunch. In the summer, they move towards the poles to colder waters, where there's plenty of krill and small fish. In the winter, they go south towards the equator's tropical waters. They also travel to mate. They have specific locations where they gather to do it. During the winter breeding season, you can hear male humpback whales sing, most likely to attract females or mark their territory. They produce a long series of calls and can repeat the same song for several hours. When the song changes, all singers that are currently migrating pick up the new tune. It's amazing how they do it when the distance between groups can be over 3,000 miles. Sea turtles migrate for more sentimental reasons. For hundreds of millions of years, these cute family guys return to the exact place where they were born to lay their eggs. They can cover up to thousands of miles, mostly when the seasons change and the waters are of a comfortable temperature. It could take them years, since some of them travel across the Pacific Ocean between Indonesia and the west coast of the United States and Canada, which is a total of 10,000 miles. But how do they find the exact spot they need if their parents can't just send them a geotag? Scientists have found out that they navigate using the invisible lines of the Earth's magnetic field. It turns out that each part of the coastline has its unique magnetic characteristics. The turtles remember theirs and travel using their internal compass. The magnetic field changes slowly but surely, so they have to shift their nesting sites accordingly. Salmon are born in freshwater streams and move to the ocean as juveniles. Atlantic salmon are brown and spotted as they cover hundreds of miles in fresh water and turn silvery in the ocean, where they travel for up to 1,000 miles. Adult salmon stay in the ocean for 1 to 5 years, feeding mostly on zooplankton. Then it's time for them to go back to freshwater to spawn. On their way back to the breeding grounds, they have to ascend thousands of feet against the current in mountain streams. This challenging journey is called a salmon run. They set on this run because they know the stream they're headed to will be good for spawning, and they'll meet the right species to mate with. Young salmon remember the smell of their home stream and probably even take note of various points along the way to the ocean to find it again. Just like sea turtles, they use the Earth's magnetic field as a compass for their travels. Pacific salmon and most male Atlantic salmon only live for a few weeks after spawning, and some female Atlantic salmon survive and migrate back to the ocean. Caribou, better known as reindeer, are the champs when it comes to migration distance among land mammals. Every spring, They cover a distance of around 400 miles in Alaska, from their winter to their summer feeding grounds. Individuals cover up to 3,000 miles, but herd migration is way more spectacular. The largest herd has at least 260,000 members, and its migration territory covers an area larger than California. Scientists put radio tracker collars on some herd members and take thousands of photos to count them all. This census is organized every 3 years in good weather conditions to see if the population figures are rising or falling and track their migration patterns. Caribou grow through all this migration trouble to safely raise their newborn young. They reach remote grounds where golden eagles, wolves, and grizzly bears won't bother the youngsters during their first, most vulnerable days. Another good excuse to hit the road up north for them is to save themselves from mosquitoes, which would be a huge problem in warmer months. Plus, they get fresh seasonal foods from the areas they stay in. Their migration helps fertilize the grounds they pass by, which means the tundra should thank them for regenerating and protecting its grasslands. Wildebeest, also known as gnus, are relatives of antelopes and gazelles. They spend most of their lives in the Serengeti plains of southeastern Africa, grazing on the grassy savannas. Every year at the end of the rainy season, normally in May or June, millions of wildebeest head northwest in search of greener pastures, and then back again. This migration is so spectacular that it's considered one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. Sadly, not all wildebeest make it to their final destination, as they have to cross rivers full of giant crocodiles and pass by hungry lions and other predators. If you look at dragonflies' migration routes, you can call them real globetrotters. Scientists discovered one such route that spanned from India to the Maldives, Seychelles, Mozambique, Uganda, and back again for at least 8,700 miles. It's the longest insect migration we know of so far. It looks like they set on this epic journey when the temperature reaches a certain mark and the days start to grow longer. They seem to be following the rains as they start during the monsoon season in India and arrive for the rainy season in eastern and southern Africa. One fragile insect cannot complete the whole trip, so it turns into a sort of relay race that includes 4 generations of dragonflies. Each generation plays its role in the journey. Scientists can't put radio trackers on dragonflies as they do with other animals because the insects are too small. So, to put together the migration route puzzle, they analyzed 21 years of data from volunteer citizen scientists and also wing samples from museums. Each of the samples had a chemical code that could roughly tell where the insect was from. This data helped the scientists understand how far this or that insect traveled as an adult. Elephants are known to have traveled across Africa for centuries. They rely on their herd leader's memory when it comes to recalling the tricky migratory routes. This big elephant boss leads everyone else to sources of ripe food and water when the seasons change. They also migrate to avoid danger, which is mostly represented by humans. Elephants have developed their own communication methods to pass on information about prospective danger. They use chemical secretions, vibrations, gestures, and touch. Recently, many African countries have restored some of the oldest elephant migration routes. These big-eared guys usually avoid dangerous areas for generations, but once they know the route is safe, they start using it again. When we look at creatures in the animal kingdom, we often have the following thought. If they have similar traits, they must be related somehow. Zebras, horses, and camels must have some common ancestor. Same goes for dogs and jackals. Somewhere back in their lineage, they must have some common great-great-great-grand wolf, right? Well, the way evolution works in nature is way more complex. Take, for instance, convergent evolution, which is when different creatures evolve independently from each other but end up having similar traits. We only need to look at sharks and dolphins to see how this works. At first glance, they look very similar. aquatic creatures with some species having roughly the same size, but turns out they're mostly unrelated. Sharks are fish. They reproduce by laying eggs and evolved to have the ability to sniff out blood in the water to feed themselves. Dolphins, on the other hand, are mammals. They're friendly and have a way more interesting social life. Take bottlenose dolphins, which have their own special whistles that they use similar to how humans use their names. Not only do they develop this type of whistle to introduce themselves to other dolphins, but they can also learn such names so they can better communicate with each other. Sure, sharks and dolphins did have a common ancestor, but this one lived in the sea almost 300 million years ago. It's safe to say, dolphins and sharks aren't even cousins these days. Another more shocking example of convergent evolution is that of whales and bats. Most of the creatures we can name on the top of our heads use light and sight to understand the world around them. But there is a specific set of creatures that relies on sound to paint them a picture of their environment. What they do is they emit a sound which bounces back to them depending on the object it hits. This ability is called echolocation. Animals that have this feature emit sounds at frequencies above human hearing, called ultrasound. Those sound waves bounce off objects while they move around, allowing them to figure out where they are in a certain space. Echolocation is mostly used by toothed whales and by some species of bats. What's similar in both of these animals is that they need to hunt in the darkness. Despite this, they echolocate in very different ways. Bats, for instance, use their throats to generate ultrasound from their mouth or nose. Then, they proceed to listen for changes in the echoes. Their echolocation is so finely tuned that they can distinguish targets less than 0.01 inches apart, even if their target is moving. Whales, on the other hand, echolocate by pushing air through their nasal cavity. This movement creates vibrations in a special fatty organ called the melon. This organ focuses and modulates the sound, which then passes into the water around the whale. Whales then pick up the reflections of these sounds through their lower jaw and around the ears. Another striking example of evolutionary convergence is that of ichthyosaurus and dolphins. Visually, the Mesozoic fish lizards named Ichthyosaurus seem very similar to modern dolphins. But the friendly mammals are much more related to giraffes and camels than the ancient creatures. Despite being 200 million years apart, they do share some common traits which mislead people into thinking they belong to the same species. But that's mostly because they lived in the same environment. They both evolved to feature dorsal fins, which keep them balanced while swimming. Now, let's look at Phytosaurus and crocodiles. The first ones were reptiles that roamed the Earth back in the Triassic period. They weren't dinosaurs, but they lived at the same time as the first dinosaurs did. Even though they look very similar, the first crocodiles popped up more than 70 million years later in the Cretaceous period. These two even fooled paleontologists at first. They initially assumed that phytosaurs were the ancestors of crocodiles. Placodonts and turtles look similar too. Placodonts, however, appeared about the same time as the dinosaurs did, somewhere around 235 million years ago. Like modern turtles, they lived in marine environments, but they were surrounded by predators. So, they evolved to have really strong shells to protect themselves. Turtles, however, made it to the scene around 100 million years later. Even modern cats have ancient lookalikes. They were called the Sparacidons, but they were carnivores and marsupials. They used to live in the South American area and resembled the saber-toothed tiger, which is now extinct. Speaking of saber-toothed tigers, how about one that's also related to the kangaroo? Yeah, this creature used to freely roam the Earth around 300 million years ago. The thylacosmilus may have looked like a feline, but it was a marsupial, meaning it had a pouch of skin in which it carried its pups for a certain period after their birth, like kangaroos and opossums do today. It's difficult to estimate what they looked like since a full skeleton has never been found, but we do know they weighed between 180 to 260 pounds. When we picture a present-day elephant, we always imagine them with their tusks protruding upwards. Well, that's not how their ancestors did it. About 20 million years ago, there lived a prehistoric elephant-like creature named Deinotherium. It did, however, have both tusks curving down from their jaw. As with many other prehistoric creatures, we don't know why they had this feature the other way around. But one theory suggests they used them as anchors. By securing themselves to riverbanks, they were able to safely sleep without drifting off. The last thylacine passed away in the early 20th century. Their extinction was one of the most tragic natural events in modern times. For the last 2,000 years, they have been known to live only on the island of Tasmania. Despite the name, they looked more like foxes than felines. However, thylacines were marsupials rather than placental mammals like foxes. The two-lake wallaby was one of the most beautiful and majestic creatures ever to have lived. It used to be found in Australia and New Zealand. They were very similar to the kangaroos and featured fine fur with shifting bands of darker and lighter gray across their backs. Surprisingly, they were dubbed monkey face, but they had no connection whatsoever to modern monkeys, apart from both being mammals. What made them so special was the way they moved around. Their standard movement consisted of 2 short hops, followed by a long one. After that, the wallaby would simply stare into the sky. Don't be fooled though, the two-legged wallaby was extremely rapid. Females were generally taller than males, and they appear to have been quite sociable animals, at times being particularly fond of a certain location. They were also nocturnal. Hyracoodonts and horses share a lot of similar features, but hyracoodonts used to exist in the Eocene and Oligocene periods, and they went extinct around 23 million years ago. In their whole group, they featured very diverse species and came in many different sizes, from the small pony-like to the colossal Paraceratherium, which is one of the largest land-living mammals ever to exist. Modern horses, however, appeared around 2 million years ago. Let's do a little experiment together. Start by stretching your arms out. If you were to draw a line from your fingertips to your shoulder, it would measure around 28 inches. Now, try to picture an insect with a wingspan this big. Hold on a minute, you won't need a large can of bug spray, don't worry. They're extinct. But the gigantic Meganeuropsis did live around 250 to 300 million years ago. However, they most likely resembled the present-day dragonflies, despite not being technically related. Scientists figured out that they were not true dragonflies because of differences in the shape of their wing veins. Scientists still don't know why these bugs turned out so big. Some believe insects are limited in size because of the small quantity of oxygen they're able to take in. In the times when these insects roamed the Earth, the levels of oxygen in our atmosphere were much higher, so that might be one explanation. Other specialists think that they got so big because there wasn't any other predator large enough to pick them up from the ground. I've prepared an animal test for you. I'll show you a picture, and your task is to say which animal it is. Sounds easy? Let's see. Don't forget to keep score, and in the end, we'll show you how well you did. We'll start with something easy, and then it'll get harder. The first one, this animal. Who is it? What do you think? Of course, it's an elephant. Elephants are the biggest land animals, and their trunks are incredibly sensitive. And Asian elephants can pick up a peanut and even shell it. Next up, this one here. Who is it? This one is for sure a turtle. Did you know that it's not DNA that determines the gender of newborn turtles? It's the temperature in the nest. If the temperature is cool, the hatchlings will be male. If the temperature is warm, the hatchlings will be female. Who do you think this cutie is? It's a penguin. Humans give flowers to their loved ones to show affection and appreciation, but penguins give rocks to each other. Also, penguins can control the blood flow in their feet. That's why they don't freeze. I know you know this one, so shoot your shot. Of course, it's a squirrel. These guys take their food seriously. They can find it beneath a whole foot of snow. Also, they can fake bury a nut to dupe potential thieves. Still, they lose about 25% of their buried food to other squirrels. What about this animal? Do you recognize it? Yes, it's a fox. Did you know they can make around 40 different sounds? Another well-known animal. Who is it? It's a giraffe. Their coat patterns are unique. There are no two giraffes with the same pattern. Also, they only drink once a few days, even when the water is nearby. What is this animal? That's a camel. They can live for weeks without a single drop of water, even more than giraffes. Just for comparison, a human can only last 3 days without water. But when camels do drink, they can drink around 40 gallons in a go. You must know this one well. Who is it? It's a hippo, of course. They really love grass and can eat like 80 pounds of it in one night. And yes, they sleep during the day and get active at night. This one, what is it? That's a rhino for sure. Turns out, rhinos have quite poor eyesight. If you stay 100 feet away from them and don't move, they won't see you. But they do have a strong sense of smell, so this helps. Also, they love mud. They roll in it to get a protective layer that protects them from insects and keeps them cool. Who do you think this one is? It's a skunk. Did you know that they are immune to snake venoms and can even eat dangerous snakes? What about this cute animal? Do you recognize it? It's a harp seal. And this white furry coat makes them one of the most adorable animals on the planet. But the coat doesn't last long. Harp seals only have them until they're about 6 weeks old. What about this? What is it? It's a scorpion. These guys are actually older than the dinosaurs. Also, they can live a year without food, and they glow in the dark. What about this big guy? Do you know who he is? That's a moose. Did you know that they only live in places where there is snow in winter? Tell me what animal this one is. It's a wolf. Turns out they're born completely blind and deaf. Of course, later it changes. A grown wolf can hear what's going on 6 miles away. Also, they have around 200 million smell cells. What about this animal? Do you know what it is? Orangutan. They're very intelligent, and they even use tools like sticks and even self-made gloves out of leaves when dealing with thorny branches. I know you know this one well, so just hit it. This is a meerkat. They live in deserts, and they don't need water to live. They get all the needed moisture from the insects and other foods they eat. What about this one? Do you know its name? Tasmanian devil. Their bite is so hard that they can crush bones. They also like to scream loudly, and they do that to scare off other animals. And a fun fact, they store their fat in the tails. Next up, this one. Who is it? That's a squid, of course. Squids have 3 hearts. Also, they eat other squids that are smaller. Can you recognize this fish? It's an electric eel. Their shock is so powerful that it can knock off a horse. Also, they have poor eyesight, so they have to release a weak electric signal to navigate. What do you think this cute animal is? It's a red panda. Their diet is 97% bamboo. The other 3% include eggs, flowers, and small mammals. What do you think this is? It's a warthog. These guys are vegetarians, and even though they're strong, they prefer to run over fighting. Also, they enjoy being groomed, so they allow monkeys to do that. Okay, here's the next one for you. Does it look familiar? It's a porcupine. Their name actually means thorn pig. They're actually shy creatures and good swimmers. As for their quills, it's actually a myth that they can shoot them at predators. However, they're easily detached, so if you ever touch them, the quills are likely to stick to your hand. Who is this? It's a groundhog. They sleep all winter and are also impressive builders. Their homes can be as long as 60 feet. This animal must be quite easy to guess. Who is it? Of course, it's a platypus. Did you know that they are lethally venomous? But no worries, no case was yet recorded. Okay, what about this guy? This is an aardvark. He's actually the first word in an English dictionary. They live on the African continent and they don't walk fully on their feet, just on their toes. Next up, this one with crazy eyes. What's your call? This one is called Eye, and it's native to Madagascar, but it doesn't have a good reputation there. Some native people believe that eyes bring bad luck. What about this cute guy right here? That's a prairie dog. Don't let their cute looks trick you. They're quite fierce. Also, they are very intelligent and have advanced vocabulary. Not only can they warn their buddies that a human is approaching. What about this bird? This is an okapi. They belong to the giraffe family and they only live in one country now, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Humans only discovered them a bit over 100 years ago, in 1901. No, it's not a Pokemon, it's an actual animal that exists in real life. What's it called? That's a nudibranch. It's a sea slug living in shallow waters all over the oceans. Another easy one for you. Who is it? Yes, it's a mink. Just like cats, they purr when they're happy. Do you know who this is? That's a margay. No one knows for sure how many of them there are globally. What's this cute animal? It's a pika. They're related to rabbits, but they're pikas. They actually have tails, but you can't see them because they're hidden under the fur. Last question, probably the hardest one. What is this? It's called a tardigrade. It's a microscopic animal that's been on Earth for 600 million years and have survived through the Earth's all big 5 extinction events and will likely survive any apocalypse. So, how many did you get right? Let me know in the comments. It was a regular dive in Australia's Great Barrier Reef for underwater photographer Christian Lane. He was taking photos of a group of male manta rays chasing a female one when suddenly he saw something that made him check if his camera strobes had been broken. There was a pink manta ray in his viewfinder. Other underwater beauties of its kind are usually black on top and white underneath. This creature Christian met that day was black on top and pink on the bottom. It turned out the photographer met Inspector Clouseau, the only known pink manta ray in the world living in the waters around Lady Elliot Island. It was named after the famous detective from Pink Panther movies. It was calm, looking at the photographer with its huge eyes. It even seemed that it was smiling at his guest, as Christian remembered in an interview. He managed to take 5 good photos of Inspector Clouseau in the 30 minutes they spent together. Divers first spotted the unique manta ray in 2015, and it was only seen less than 10 times ever since. First, the scientists thought the secret to this unusual color was in its diet. They took a sample of its skin and found out it was actually a result of a genetic mutation that caused it to express melanin differently. Many fish have it, but it usually turns them into albinos. For a regular sea creature, a combo of black, which blends with dark waters and can't be seen from above, and white, which blends with light, is ideal protection. A color mutation with pink in the picture would make other sea animals more vulnerable to predators. But a manta ray weighing as much as a car and 1.5 times taller than an average basketball player definitely has nothing to be afraid of. These creatures are born rather big and grow fast in the first few years so they can defend themselves. If you were impressed by a manta ray the shade of bubblegum, meet blue bees. These unique Australian inhabitants have turquoise stripes instead of yellow, which makes them look like flying sapphires. Their thin brown wings look like layers of cellophane with engraved patterns. Another unusual thing about them is their lifestyle. The blue-banded bees are singles. They don't move in swarms and don't live in large nests. They prefer settling in small burrows in the soil or crevices in rocks. Blue bees also have a special way of pollination. They sit on the flower, hold it tightly, and shake the whole body to make the flower move quickly and gently. Then the bees stop and collect all the pollen that goes out of the capsule inside the flower. Blue bees work for Australian agriculture, helping with tomatoes, cranberries, eggplants, blueberries, kiwi, and chili peppers. The next unique Australian animal is called the happiest on this planet. A quagga never stops smiling and looks like a live teddy bear. It's a nocturnal creature the size of a cat. It has inherited its appearance from its relative, the kangaroo. It also has a pouch, which serves as a home for its offspring for 6 months. Quaggas have a diet of grass, shrubs, and leaves. When there isn't enough food, they can use stored fat in their tails as a source of energy. They mostly live on Rottnest Island off the coast of Western Australia. Since there's no predators or traffic there, quaggas have nothing to fear and gladly come into contact with humans. It's against the law to touch them, but no one has banned taking selfies. When you look into the eyes of this cutie pie, the only question is, who on earth would call it the Tasmanian devil? Well, it wasn't that friendly to the European settlers who came to Tasmania in the early 19th century. The cutie pie greeted them with frightening growls, high-pitched screeches, and unearthly screams. They had no more doubts about how to name it when they saw its red ears and extra white jaws with sharp teeth. But when it doesn't have to defend itself, its meals, or impress a mate, the creature goes back to its cute appearance. And although these guys are the world's largest surviving carnivorous marsupials, they don't hunt their prey, but eat carrion. They're mostly active at night, but also enjoy some time in the sun, especially in the water, splashing around. Female devils have pouches to carry their offspring, and up to 4 of those fit in at the same time. Our next hero of the day is so unique that the first scientists to describe it thought they were dealing with a hoax. A platypus has a bill and webbed feet like a duck. the tail of a beaver, and the body and fur of an otter. Males also have sharp stingers with venom on the heels of their rear feet, which they can use to defend themselves from enemies. A venomous mammal is something super rare. Platypuses paddle their way through life as they hunt underwater. They can spend up to 2 minutes submerged to smell some food on the bottom. They don't have any teeth, so they use gravel to chew their lunch. Platypuses don't look that graceful as they move on land, but they can run if they really have to. Echidna is another unique Australian natural hybrid. It has porcupine-like spines, a beak much like that of a bird, a pouch like a wombat's, and lays eggs like a reptile. It feeds its offspring on milk, which just oozes out of the skin in the pouch, and the little one enjoys it. Since it has traits of both a mammal and a reptile, it got its name after a creature from Greek mythology, who was half woman and half snake. Echidnas have pretty strong snouts, which they use to break open logs and termite mounds. Their sense of smell is so good, they can smell food and danger. Their limbs are short with shovel-like claws, perfect for digging out food. Echidnas don't like the company of people or other animals, but you can still find them all over Australia, from deserts to rainforests and mountains. They are the country's most widespread native mammal. Echidnas are great swimmers, and they've been spotted crossing rivers. When the weather gets too harsh for them, they burrow into the soil or in hollow logs and burrows left by other animals. This guy, looking like a mix of a koala and a kangaroo, is a tree kangaroo. It doesn't like the company of others and hides among the trees in tropical rainforests of the mountains in Queensland, New Guinea, and nearby islands. They don't build nests and just camp on any branch they find safe. Tree kangaroos are born well prepared for this way of living, with shorter hind limbs, strong arms, and a long tail for balance to leap among the branches. They have broader feet than their ground relatives and padded soles with sharp curved claws to help them grip during climbing. Tree kangaroos are great long-distance jumpers, both between trees and from their tops. All this makes them rather clumsy when they're on the ground. The heavy tail makes them hop funnily, leaning far forward to keep balance. They also have a cool talent for moving their hind limbs independently while walking. They spend around 60% of their lives sleeping. Sounds like a dream. There are at least 12 species of this cutie, with fur colors from golden and red to black and dark brown. Did you just hear the chainsaw sound? There must be a lyrebird nearby. Those guys have the superpower of copying sounds from their surroundings. With the help of some complex muscles in its syrinx, a lyrebird can mimic camera shutters, different tools, other birds, and reportedly even human speech. It takes them up to 1 year to master this talent, and then they can use it to fool their rivals. Lyrebirds mostly hang out close to the ground and rarely fly. They got their name after the shape of their beautiful tail. It's a great mating tool as it does look like a lyre when opened. That award for the smallest heart in the world goes to a fairy fly. It's a little insect that's about as thick as a piece of paper. You'll need a microscope to see its heart. Despite the name, this creature isn't a fly. The fairy fly is actually a wasp. If you ever get a chance to look at one under a microscope, you'll see the resemblance. Moving over to bigger but equally impressive hearts from the animal kingdom, zebrafish have a very cool ability when it comes to their tickers, which are only about 0.04 inches in diameter. Their hearts can regenerate. If a zebrafish's heart ever gets damaged or has a problem, most of the time it can repair itself. Human hearts may be awesome since they continuously try to replace their cells and repair heart tissue, but it's no match for that of the zebrafish. Let's look at cockroaches. Our hearts have 4 chambers, each of them with a designated task. The system can't function without all 4 working properly. The heart of a cockroach has 12 to 13 chambers, which are placed in a row along the length of the insect's body, on average about 1.5 inches. They work separately since they're powered by different muscles. This means that if any of those chambers gets affected, the insect might not even notice. Most of the time, the cockroaches survive without all those heart chambers working properly. A hummingbird's heart can beat up to 1,200 times per minute. The heart of a human athlete might only go as fast as 220 beats per minute. Despite being one of the smallest hearts in the world, that of a hummingbird is quite large compared to the bird's full size. It amounts to about 2.5% of its total body weight. By the way, the blue-throated hummingbird flaps its wings up to 15 times each second. It's so fast that this movement cannot be perceived by the human eye. That impressive speed is backed up by an even faster heart, which beats up to 21 times each second. Ever heard of the emperor penguin? It's not a penguin species that just happens to have a crown on its head, if that's what you're thinking. They are fascinating swimmers that can dive deeper than any other bird, up to 700 feet. Not to mention that they can stay submerged for up to 18 minutes at a time as they gather food. Their hearts are equally as spectacular, weighing somewhere around 5 ounces. Their hearts are very slow. When in the water, an emperor penguin can reduce its heart rate to about 15 beats per minute. It shuts down the blood supply to all but the most vital organs. It also dials down oxygen consumption, allowing the animal to use only what's necessary for deep water hunting. Heart size tends to be pretty proportional throughout the animal kingdom. Most of these organs weigh somewhere around 0.6% of an animal's body mass. Dogs and wolves have bigger hearts by comparison, about 0.8% of the animal's total weight. An average dog's heart weighs about 20 ounces. If a human heart suddenly got filled with fat, it would become a problem pretty fast. But that's very different for a python, though. If that happens to this reptile, it's actually a sign that things are going great. Pythons tend to have really big meals. After each of such meals, their hearts get larger by about 40%. And since a python can weigh as much as 250 pounds, that's a lot. Most of these increases is caused by the snake's heart swelling up because of fatty acids absorbed from the meal. These reptiles adapted to do so to speed up their digestion, even though it still takes them days to process one single meal. Their blood gets so full of fatty acids, it even changes its color and consistency. In some cases, it may even turn opaque, looking more like milk than anything else. Finishing our chart on the other side of the spectrum, the largest heart in the animal kingdom belongs to the blue whale. And for a good reason, since they're some of the largest animals ever. This giant heart is about as big as a bathtub and weighs more than the average gorilla. Regardless of their size, animal hearts are amazing. Us humans and most animals just have one heart, but this rule doesn't apply to all creatures. Take octopuses or squids, which have 3 hearts. This is how their system works. 2 of their hearts help to pump blood to the gills, so they have enough oxygen in their bodies. The 3rd heart pumps blood around the body. Some animals don't have hearts altogether. It doesn't necessarily make them mean, though. Jellyfish, starfish, or corals lead pretty good lives even without hearts. Take starfish, for example. They don't even have blood. That's probably the reason why they don't need a heart either. No list is complete without some amazing facts about the human heart. You don't need to Google it or look for an anatomy book to know how big your heart is. Just squeeze your fingers and make a fist. That's about as large as the heart gets in adults. This amazing organ is responsible for keeping everything active in our bodies. It can beat about 115,000 times every day. Ever watched a cartoon in which the main character's heart just starts pumping out of its chest? Most of the time, we're tricked into thinking that the sound our heart makes is produced when this organ touches the tissue surrounding it when beating. Turns out that this sound is actually made by the opening and closing of the heart valves. They're like small doors inside our hearts that ensure that blood flows correctly from one side of the heart to the other. For our bodies to work, blood needs to move at the right time and in the right direction. Our lungs are not twins, they're siblings, and our heart is the reason. Our right lung is bigger and tends to weigh more, and our heart is to blame. Our ticker tilts to the left a bit. This creates a small indentation in our left lung, which is called the cardiac impression. The right lung may be bigger, but it's a bit shorter since it needs to make room for the liver. Speaking of positioning, our heart is really not as far on the left as we might think. It's actually pretty centered with just a slight tilt to the left. People born with dextrocardia, though, have their hearts positioned on the right side of their chest. This condition, on its own, isn't problematic, but it tends to coincide with other diseases that can have serious effects on the heart and other organs. Do you know most heart attacks happen on Mondays? The reason is still up for debate, but most scientists believe it has to do with the stress of starting a new working week or with the changes in our sleep-wake cycle. You tend to sleep more at the weekend, and waking up earlier on Monday may be detrimental to your heart. Your heart started beating about 4 weeks after you were conceived, and it won't stop until you pass away. Sure, it may get weaker as you grow older, but the heart doesn't get tired. It's a really hard job if you think about it. Try this experiment to test it out. Squeeze a tennis ball in your hand. Your beating heart is about the same force, 100,000 times a day. I bet you'll lose count before finishing. In some cases, the energy our hearts need to carry on pumping is unstable. That's why pacemakers were invented. They act like small generators placed inside the human body. They help with stabilizing abnormal heart rhythms. The first ever device of this kind was put into a woman's body back in 1958. Her name was Arna Larson, and when she passed away at 86, it was because of other issues. It had nothing to do with her heart.
So, we all know that Mother Nature is wise. If she blesses some creature with a particular body part, it should make perfect sense, right? Well, yeah, but still, some wildlife shots make you wonder if evolution has gone the wrong way. Snakes' natural design allows them to swallow a whole mouse. But in some cases, this cool ability can turn against them. Yes, snakes can actually swallow themselves. Scientists believe that they mostly do this because of stress, captivity, temperature regulation, hunger, or illness. The snake is pretty helpless in this situation, you can tell. If it doesn't get help in time, digestive juices may begin to corrode the swallowtail. So if you ever catch your pet snake doing this, try to stop it, or take it to the vet. Okay, but what about the fangs, I hear you ask? Does a venomous snake have immunity to its own venom? Well, if the snake digests it, it will be okay. It's because protein is a primary component in venom. And besides, the venom is excreted by the gland in the snake's mouth. So no matter whom the snake bites, chances are that it's going to drink a bit. So the only way a snake can actually suffer from its own venom is by biting itself straight into the blood vessel. In this case, it'll experience the same reaction as any other animal. Now, think you're having a bad hair day? Hey, check this guy out. Chris was an Australian merino ram who became a celebrity in 2015 after being discovered in the wild. Farmers shorn him and gained nearly 90 pounds of wool. When the animal was found, he carried over 5 years' worth of fleece on his body. But Chris belonged to the domestic sheep breed that needs to be shorn regularly. Otherwise, the animal is at great risk of injury and infection. So the lives of these cuties depend directly on going to the hairdresser. Shall we talk about horns? Cattle, goats, and many other species proudly wear this fancy headdress not only for fashion, but also as a weapon for brutal battles. If you ask this bighorn sheep ram directly how old he is, You'll probably hear something like, "bah." But if you want to get a more precise answer, you can count the number of rings on his horns. The biggest and the darkest ring usually marks the 4th birthday, when the ram matures enough for mating. Although animal horns may look very tough, in fact, most of them are made of keratin. It's the same protein that builds human hair and nails. Horns never stop growing as the animal ages, just like our own hair. And eventually, they can curl into really extravagant shapes, making these weapons turn against their owners. This is what a Wiltshire sheep horn looks like when it's young. But as the years go by, the horns typically curl in front of its face. And while most grow out harmlessly, the inward growing horns can end up dangerously close to the sheep's head. Like this ram who's having bad luck, to say the least. Its horn has slowly grown into its own skull, and eventually, well, it didn't end well for the sheep. Of course, this would hardly have happened on a farm, because people would have made a preventive horn cut. But unfortunately, in the wild, animals cannot use hairdresser services. That's why they use rocks and branches to rub and grind away at their horns to keep them safe, just like humans trim their nails. Faulty genetics is not the only reason for the horn distortion. You see, when males of the species want to fight for dominance, they begin to butt heads to show each other who's the alpha male here. These battles can break horn plates, making them grow at weird and dangerous angles. The fancier the original shape of the horns is, the more problems their fracture may cause. This poor African kudu is a bright example. Fortunately, in some cases, unlimited body part growth can be good for the animal. Just take a look at these adorable smiles. If you happen to break off your own molar tooth, your dentist would probably say it's irreversible and offer a replacement. But if an alpaca breaks its front teeth, all it has to do is wait a bit. Although these animals don't have upper teeth, their lower teeth constantly grow throughout their lifetime, and they might look pretty creepy when they get too long. That's why some farmers prefer trimming them from time to time, just like pet owners cut the nails of their cats or dogs. Now, llamas look so similar to alpacas that many people confuse these two species. But the significant difference between them is that llamas' front teeth are encased in enamel. That's why, unlike alpacas, they don't possess the superpower of limited growth. Too bad. Unlike the keratin horns, deer antlers are made entirely of bone. Typically, only male deers, called stags, grow antlers. Very rarely, females can grow them too due to a serious hormone imbalance. This is a deer equivalent of a beard on a human female that sometimes can appear due to various diseases. Adult deers grow and shed their antlers annually, which coincides with the breeding season. At first, their antlers are covered in velvet, a protective skin with blood vessels. But once the antler is fully developed, the deer gets rid of the velvet, just like snakes shed their skin. Although this process doesn't harm the deer, it may look pretty spooky. Once the brand new antlers are ready, stags begin to fight with other males over the ladies' attention. Usually stags barely eat or sleep during this competition. And if you ever question whether the antlers of two deers can get locked together, the answer is yes. Every stag is risking ending up stuck with his own rival instead of having a romantic night out with a female deer. Bummer. Moreover, all the traumas that the deer gets during the mating season can influence further antler growth if specific nerves get damaged. Just like horns, antlers can develop at distorted angles because of genetic failures. Some mutations can even make them grow monstrously large. This unlucky deer can barely move his head without losing balance. Also, if a deer breaks one of its legs, its body can speed up the healing by sacrificing the bone and blood material from one of the antlers, and thus this antler will get thinner and weaker. And speaking of facial extensions, we cannot skip the tusks. Please meet Babirusa from Indonesia. This ancient boar first emerged over 35,000 years ago. It's easy to confuse these big tusks with horns, but they are actually upper canines. They tend to pierce through the skin of the boar's face as it matures. Scientists believe that these intimidating tusks have evolved as a tool to protect eyes and throat while fighting with other males during mating season. But this design doesn't seem very thoughtful. If a male boar doesn't grind his tusk regularly, they can end up curling back into his own skull, which can blind him or even worse. Now, what if I told you that hoofs can grow out of control just like horns and antlers? It took evolution millions of years to turn the middle toe of the animal's foot bone into the hoof. And just like toenails, they tend to grow and curl into creepy shapes if they aren't cut regularly. When donkeys or horses don't have a chance to wear down their hooves naturally by walking on hard surfaces, they tend to overgrow. This makes the animals walk on the balls of their feet and overstretch the tendons, which may result in pain and bone loss. And eventually, they can lose the ability to walk at all. So if you ever come across a horse with curly hooves, consider calling the experts to give it an emergency manicure. Perhaps one of the most obvious questions regarding the undersea world is, can a fish drown in the water? Yup, it can. Although gills are an amazing gift of nature, there are still many factors that may deprive a fish of healthy breathing. When the oxygen level in the water is too low, fish begin to suffocate. But it happens very rarely in the wild. Oxygen deficit usually appears in aquariums that are not washed and replenished often enough. Also, parasites, diseases, and an overall imbalance in water components can cause the fish to drown. And on that note, I need to hoof it on out of here. See you next time. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.